Faites l'appel, s'il vous plaît, Madame le greffier.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier. Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brelade.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Martin.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Clément.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Grouville.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Bron.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Marie. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Southern.
Présent.
Madame le député Labbé.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Tadier.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Luce.
Présent.
Madame le député Dublay.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Morel.
Présent.
Madame le député Lehegara. Monsieur le député Ayer.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Alves.
Présente.
Madame le député Gardner. Monsieur le député Gauss.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Farnham.
Présent.
Madame le député Moore. Monsieur le député Mezek.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Balash.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Coles.
Présent.
Madame le député Poré. Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Miles.
Présente.
Madame le député Scott.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Renouf.
Présent.
Madame le député Curtis. Madame le député Feltham.
Présente.
Madame le député Binet.
Présente.
Madame le député Jeune. Madame le député Miller.
Présente.
Madame le député Howell.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Binet. Monsieur le député Ferry.
Présent.
Madame le député Kovac. Monsieur le député Curtis. Madame le député Ward.
Présente.
Madame le député Wilson.
Présente.
Madame le député Stevenson.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Andrews.
Monsieur le doyen.
Notre soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait le ciel et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi les gouvernements et les puissances de la terre pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton saint nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir les cœurs et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, de la conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit, que toute leur délibération est accompagnée de ta bénédiction. Réussis au bien et au soulagement du peuple, qu'il te plu de commettre à leurs soins. Car nous t'en prions au nom et par le mérite de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné de t'invoquer en descendant. Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite sur la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonne nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous envoie pas en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal. Car à toi le règne, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Marie.
Defo.
Madame le député Jeune. Madame le député Kovac.
Defo. Les États sont constitués. So we start with communications. And firstly, on behalf of members, I'd like to welcome His Excellency, who's joining us in the chamber this morning. And secondly, it gives me great pleasure to be able to announce that the Princess Royal will be visiting Jersey on the 30th of April. and as patron of Durrell, she will be opening the new gorilla enclosure. And thirdly, I'm delighted to say that we have a visit from the Jurat de Saint-Emilion with us in the public gallery, together with Jurat and Lieutenant Bailiff Christensen. As members know, our Jurats judge legal cases, but the cases that the Jurats of Saint-Emilion judge are the contents of cases of wine. Monsieur et Mesdames les jurats de Saint-Emilion, bienvenue à l'Assemblée des États de Jersey. Deputy Taddy, you had your light on.
No, I don't think I did, sir, but
All right.
bienvenue.
Thank you,
Comme
Deputy.
je suis là, monsieur, de la part de l'Assemblée de la francophonie parlementaire et de la section de Jersey, je vous souhaite tous et toutes le bienvenue à Jersey également.
Merci. So there are a number of subordinate enactments under Section B of the order paper. Also, a number of matters have been presented or laid, as described in Section C of the consolidated order paper. And then moving to Section D, notification of lodged propositions. The following propositions have been lodged. Treating children as children, that's P14. Second Amendment lodged by Deputy Gorst. Then the draft Water Law Jersey Amendment Regulations, P2026 Amendment, and that's been lodged by Deputy Moore. Then the draft Water Law Amendment Regulations, P26 again, 2026 Amendment, Second Amendment, lodged by Deputy Binet. And prosecution of illegal taxi services, P52 amendments lodged by the Minister for Infrastructure. Then continuation of rural and marine support amendment, P54, that's lodged by the Minister for Treasury and Resources. Work permit changes, amendment P57, lodged by Deputy Poiré of St Heliers South. And deferral of land transaction, Philip Lefevre House and Huguenot House. That's lodged by Deputy War of St Heliers South. And moving to Section E of the order paper, in accordance with Standing Order 34.1, the proposer of the following proposition lodged au greffe has informed the greffier that it is to be withdrawn. And that is the review of affordable housing percentage in developments, lodged, that's P33, lodged by Deputy Scott of St Brelon.
Sir?
Yes.
Sir, can I advise members that I'll be withdrawing P32, sir? Apologies for the delay, but there are some issues which we need to engage on further to support the understanding of what is being proposed. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor. P32 withdrawn.
Sir, may I just advise members that I have to attend a medical appointment, and so we'll have to leave later this morning, and then later this evening. I wasn't anticipating the late sitting, and I will not be able to stay until the end because I'm participating in a service with our chers amis, the Jurats of Saint-Emilion.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy. In that case, we move to F. There is nothing under F, the appointment of ministers, nothing under G, matters of privilege, and nothing under H, petitions. Moving to section I, the answers to written questions set out in the order paper have been lodged as attached to the consolidated order paper. And in that case, we move on to oral questions with notice. And the first question is from Deputy Tadier to the Minister for Infrastructure. So I invite Deputy Tadier to ask his oral question. Deputy Tadier.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise what road safety improvement works are planned in St Brelade over the next 2-year period, including any works under consideration on La Route de la Baie and in the area of La Moye?
Thank you, sir. I thank the Deputy for his question. So clearly I can only comment on roads under our administration and not the parish byroads. In recent years, route reviews have been undertaken on both La Route de Noirmont and Rue de la Baie to assess road safety issues, consider possible regulatory changes and identify opportunities to support active travel. A range of outlined scheme options have been developed for these routes. Their progression over the next 2 years will depend on the availability of funding and their prioritisation alongside other island-wide schemes, including those linked to the Safer Routes to Schools programme. Within St Brelade, 2 specific locations currently fall within this programme. Firstly, proposals for an improved school crossing on Route de Kennevet and footpath and crossing improvements on Rue de la Sergentée, the latter being subject of the acquisition of adjacent land. Should funding and prioritisation allow, the Department intends to bring forward the most feasible of these options within the next 2-year period. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Supplementary, Deputy Tadier.
So I know there were separate parts to this question, so the Minister may need to provide additional information later, sir, but when it comes to La Rue de la Baie, so St Brelade's Bay in other words, there have been repeated calls for improvements for pedestrian crossings and perhaps for practical slowing down of traffic there. I'm mindful that the officers from the Minister's Department did do a walkabout with the representatives for the area. Can he advise how close we are to implementing some of those changes specifically in that area, which is also an important area for tourists?
Thank you, sir. So my understanding is that La Rue de la Baie is currently planned for resurfacing in 2032. The department carried out vehicle and pedestrian surveys in the bay in 2023, showing good speed compliance, sir. And so, as I mentioned earlier, it will require funding to be available and be in the priorities. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. The Minister mentioned Route de la Sergentée, which he knows I have a considerable interest in. Is he able to provide any update on progress that his officers may have made in relation to that route crossing, both in terms of the pedestrian crossing and in terms of the road improvements on that road?
So I believe we are making some progress, small progress, with a small parcel of land, sir, but I think the Deputy is well aware of the area that will unblock this scheme, sir, and I believe we're still waiting to hear back from the owner of the land. Thank you, sir.
Conatable St Brelade.
So do I get a supplementary? Second question, sir?
Supplementary, yes.
Thank you. The Minister mentioned that the Safe Routes to Schools and that this is on the Safe Routes to Schools. Would he indicate whether he has given instructions to his officers that this is therefore a priority project for them?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So it is one of many priorities, sir, and only yesterday I met with a parishioner of St Saviour to talk about safe routes to school in that area, sir. So I've offered to meet with the landowner, sir, and I'm still waiting to hear back. I've offered to meet the landowner for over 12 months, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. The Conatable St Brelade.
So in picking up from the Minister mentioned the acquisition of a land parcel on Rue de la Sergentée. This has been going on for a significant number of years, and would the Minister confirm that he will progress this matter without further delay? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
So I can't give that commitment, sir. I'm a matter of days away from finishing as Minister for Infrastructure, sir. So it'll be up to my successor. So I'm fully aware of the challenges there. I've made a site visit on more than one occasion, sir. We really need to encourage the landowner to help us with this. I know that some representatives have met with the landowner and haven't been well received particularly. And sir, my door is open, sir, but I can't make a long-term commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Supplementary.
I thank the Minister for that response, sir.
Final supplementary, Deputy Tadier.
So whilst we know the Minister may not always be in this position, the officers were there before he took office and they'll be there after he leaves office. Would the Minister consider instructing his officers or asking them whether there's a plan B for the area in La Saint-Jean onto Le Fougerolles, so that actually if there isn't a willing selling and a timely selling of the land that the department needs, that it could either be compulsory purchase, but actually a more likely route might be a solution that doesn't require any purchase of private land to seek alternative road calming measures. Is that something the Minister can give an undertaking to do before he leaves office?
Sir, I'm very confident that the department will continue to do their very best, sir, in this area. Of course, they were dealing with this problem and many other problems long before I arrived as Minister, sir. And I would take this opportunity to pay tribute to the transport team in infrastructure, sir, who do a fantastic job with limited resources, and they have many, many competing priorities. Thank you, sir.
So can I ask to raise the depot on Deputy Kovac, please?
Members content to raise the depot? The depot is raised on Deputy Kovac. Thank you. We moved on to the next oral question, and that is to be asked by the Connétable of St Martin to the Minister for Health and Social Services. Connétable.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister assure the Assembly that any discussions to extend private health insurance to islanders, as mentioned by the Chief Minister during questions without notice on 24th of February 2026, will not include consideration of removing the provision of any universally available public health services in the island? Thank you.
Minister.
So, as members know, we are looking at various models of health funding, but I'm pleased to reassure the Constable that we no intention of removing the provision of any universally provided public health services.
Thank you, Minister. Supplementary, Connétable.
No, thank you, sir. I think the question has been answered.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Would the Minister confirm if any future proposal for the private health insurance will be brought for the debate to the Assembly and will not be policy decision made by the Minister?
Minister.
As I think the Deputy will know, our terms come to an end very shortly, and it'll probably be in the hands of somebody else. But I would imagine that whoever that is, something as major and as important as that would have to come back to the Assembly in any event. So.
Supplementary, Deputy Gardner. Deputy Renouf.
Welcome the reassurance from the Minister. Will he therefore explain a little bit more about what is being proposed in terms of private healthcare, in terms of how it will impact patients?
Minister.
So I think the Deputy knows that this is in its very early stages. I haven't had a chance to catch up with the officer who's actually leading on this since our last Assembly meeting. It really is in its infancy, and I'm genuinely not in a position, I'm not withholding anything, I'm just not in a position to make any concrete statements of any sort. So thank you.
Minister. Supplementary. Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. What instructions will the Minister therefore be leaving behind for who may take over the role of Minister next?
Minister.
So simply to carry on with the work that's currently underway.
Supplementary. No. Any final supplementary, Connétable?
Thank you, sir.
Very well, we move to the third oral question, which Deputy Scott will ask of the Chair of PPC. Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. In relation to the States Assembly decision tracker available on the States Assembly website, will the Chair advise the reasoning behind the decision to limit the information on the tracker to propositions dating back to June 2018, and whether it is anticipated that propositions prior to that date will be included, and if so, to what earlier date, and if not, why not?
Chair. Deputy Owen.
Thank you, sir. The tracker was completed back to the start of the 2018 term for operational and administrative reasons. When the tracker was introduced as a requirement of standing orders, there was no obligation to look backwards. Starting the tracker from January 2024, when it was introduced, would have been sufficient procedurally. The States Gref decided to complete it back to June 2018, as this was considered to strike an appropriate balance between providing the information desired by members and the public and the resource and time required to populate the tracker. Going back further would evidently require more time. For that reason, there is no anticipation at present of populating the tracker with propositions from before June 2018. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Supplementary, Deputy Scott.
So one of the propositions that is not included on the proposition on the tracker as a result of this decision is P32 2018 relating to the establishment of a public services ombudsman. Given that the PPC has in the past been resistant to the implementation of this proposition, would the chair like to comment on whether it might be optically appropriate to at least go back another year?
Thank you, Deputy. Chair.
Thank you, sir. I do not think it would be necessary to go back before that period. As the Deputy mentioned, she referenced P32 by Deputy Ozef, but it is quite clear that that particular proposition has not been forgotten because of all the engagement that Deputy Scott has had on this particular matter. So I think that members will be aware of those propositions which they believe should be brought forward, and I do not think it would be necessary to populate the tracker prior to that date at the current time. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy I. Any supplementary questions for Deputy I? No? In that case, we move on to oral question 4, which Deputy Andrews will ask of the Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chief Minister state how much the government has spent on consultants during the political term and advise what steps the government has taken to reduce spending on consultants across the public sector?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. Good morning. As reported in the annual report and accounts, consultancy and temporary staffing spending dropped by 29 million pounds in 2024 compared to 2023. The figures for 2025 will be published as part of the government's report on the use of consultants and contingent labour and will be published before the pre-election period on the 20th of April. So I think I should point out that the figures are subject to rigorous review, and that must be undertaken before publication, sir. So once those figures have been reviewed and agreed, I'll be able to provide the figure. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Supplementary, Deputy Andrews.
Yes, please, sir. The CNAG mentioned the importance of the government improving its internal processes to make sure that we utilise the people within the public sector before we utilise consultants. And I want to know whether steps have been taken to address this area, and if so, how has the Chief Minister gone about it? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Minister.
Sir, the short answer to that is yes, controls on consultants. Thank you, sir. The short answer to that is yes, controls on consultancy and spending were introduced in June 2024 for the Chief Officer and the Chief Executive to approve. That included agency contracts in excess of 12 months, consultants, contingent labour, which includes interims, personal contract holders that are employed on day rates, and other similar professional services, sir. There's been a noticeable shift from use of off-island project managers and temporary executive level to more on-island temporary staff, sir. The current policy is to utilise and transfer staff internally and to use local staff and consultants.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Any supplementaries for the Chief Minister on this question? Yes, Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Could the Chief Minister clarify what proportion of the consultancy spend is directed towards strategic policy advice versus operational delivery?
Not off the top of my head, sir. I'd need some time to get those figures. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Any other supplementary? Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Deputy Wilson.
I take from that comment that the Chief Minister would be happy to provide that data when he has it.
Yes, I'd be grateful if the Deputy could put in writing her exact question and we'll provide a prompt response.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Any supplementaries on this question? Back to you, Deputy Andrews. Final no. Very well, then we move on to the next oral question, which Deputy Renouf will ask of the Minister for Environment.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister state what discussions, if any, he had with the Council of Ministers and with Jersey Water prior to lodging the draft Water Law Jersey Amendment Regulations, and what work, if any, was undertaken to understand the potential cost to Jersey Water of the legal requirements proposed in the regulations?
Thank you, Deputy. Minister.
Thank you, sir. So throughout 2025, Council Ministers were kept updated with the opportunity for discussion on the emerging recommendations set out in Report 4 of the Independent PFAS Scientific Advisory Panel. Steering group meetings on PFAS remediation work involving Jersey Water and my officers have been taking place monthly since May 2025. However, sir, I lodged my amendment in February without formal consultation with COM or Jersey Water because I was conscious that there were very few opportunities to debate this important matter before the election. I am now certainly very aware that had I not done so, another 6 months would have passed while a new minister took office, was then briefed, and then had to bring forward a proposition on their own. I was aware that Jersey Water presented the independent PFAS panel with its preferred solution for PFAS in March last year, adapting the 2 existing water treatment plants at an estimated cost of around £40 million. The panel drew on this when making its recommendations, which I am asking members to support later in the city. If the company's plans have been revised, I'm yet to be presented with the detail. So my role as regulator is to set the standards for mains water, not to establish how Jersey Water should meet the standard or how it should be funding. Setting a firm enforceable limit sends a message to the public that we are taking PFAS seriously. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Supplementary, Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. The Ministerial Code says that executive members shall adopt a no surprises approach regarding announcements. And it also says the Chief Minister must be notified of the intention to make significant announcements. Can the Minister therefore confirm that he did not follow the Ministerial Code? And can he explain why he acted with some contempt, I would say, for his colleagues in not consulting with them before making an announcement?
Minister.
So it's clearly going to be a moot point between myself and the Deputy whether I consulted with COM or not. But throughout last year and this year, I have said, and I quote actually, I plan to introduce the standard in this term of government. I have been absolutely clear throughout this work, sir, that I intended during my time as Minister to bring forward limits. I worked with the panel on that. Everybody was completely aware of that. COM, Jersey Water, all people concerned. It should be no surprise if the Deputy wants to accuse me of things because I didn't formally inform COM the week before I set this. He's welcome to do so, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Jean.
Thank you, sir. The Minister, in his first answer to the Assembly, talked about the preferred, in March, that the steering group was aware that the Jersey Water had put £40 million and that the treatment works in the current treatment works was the preferred option. Could the Minister confirm whether he received any communications, advice or cost estimates from Jersey Water since March and prior to lodging his proposition regarding the potential need for a new treatment work and what the scale of costs would be involved?
Minister.
Certainly, sir. I was conscious, and I'm sure everybody would be aware, that during discussions during last year, a whole range of options were discussed and put on the table. One of the reasons for that is that during the year, the panel indicated that 4 nanograms per litre might be a limit they would go for, but they would also consider reducing that limit further to 2 nanograms if the results of the food testing indicated that that was necessary. And it was clear to me, and I'm sure to everyone else, that one of the options on the table was a new treatment works, that it would be expensive. But the intimation was very clear also that that was something that would come with a level of 2 nanograms, which was clearly not going to be achievable at the existing treatment works. But the panel, once the food had been analysed and the results had been published, were very clear they were going to stick with 4 nanograms and all the way through Jersey Water. Although they said the word challenging, it might be challenging. That certainly doesn't mean to me it's not possible, but they said it might be challenging. The indication was that the 2 treatment works could be fitted out to reduce PFAS in drinking water to that level.
Supplementary, Deputy Chair.
Yes, sir, thank you. And I think on our PFAS hearing on Friday, Minister, you reiterated what you were saying is that you saw that there was the 2 treatment works, the current 2 treatments works were where the treatments could happen. But of course, the panel has received a letter from Jersey Water saying that will not be possible. I was wondering if the Minister has met with Jersey Water to discuss this since the lodging of the proposition, to discuss these concerns raised by Jersey Water.
Sir, I am aware that the panel have received a letter from Jersey Water, but that is since and after I lodged my proposition. I certainly, despite their attempts to meet me, have not found it possible to meet with Jersey Water since I lodged my proposition, and I would repeat what I said to the panel on Friday. It's very disappointing that all the way through this process, the official numbers I've had from Jersey Water have indicated that they will work with 4 nanograms in 5 years. And the moment I lodged my proposition, the Jersey Water have been coming out with an alternative proposition. It is disappointing that that's been the case, but the official and the recommendations, the representations made to the official scientific panel by Jersey Water never changed, and the scientific panel's recommendations is what I have proposed.
Mr. Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. I find it extraordinary that we've got 3 separate proposals from 3 different ministers on this subject, that none of which appear to have been developed in consultation with one another. Sir, will the Minister please provide some clarity about the government's long-term strategy on this matter? As without it, how does he expect the public to have any confidence in any new legislation or the ability to meet the requirements that it will set?
Minister.
I'm tempted to ask the Deputy to repeat that question, so it's quite a long one, but I think what I will say is this. It's an interesting scenario where the regulator appointed by government comes up with against the shareholder, also part of government, and it's certainly something that happens very, very rarely. In this instance, I've been quite clear that my position as regulator means that I should regulate. And I've said all along that we engaged a scientific panel to do this work for us, and they gave recommendations on the basis of best public health. And I think it is my job, pretty much irrespective of what I might think personally, it's my job as regulator to put forward the recommendations of the scientific panel. I've done that in the knowledge that other people, including ministers, including any states member, may not feel happy about that. But I feel that it is my role to put forward these recommendations, and if others, regardless of where they come from, seek to amend that, that's what the States Assembly is for, and we will debate the options.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. I think I know the answer to this next question, but I will ask it anyway. Does the Minister have any intention to consider withdrawing his proposition pending further collaborative work between ministers, Jersey Water and other stakeholders to find a pragmatic way forward on this important subject so that this Assembly doesn't get itself into potentially a bit of a mess here today? Thank you.
Absolutely not, sir.
Deputy Balash.
So there seem to be a number of extraordinary things about this proposition, but I would like to ask the Minister, given that Jersey Water cannot afford to implement the legal obligation which it is proposed to impose upon it, who is going to pay for it?
Minister.
So, as unpalatable as it might be to hear, I have said already in my answer that my role as regulator is not to concern itself with the cost of the recommendations I might put forward. I say that quite glibly, and I don't mean that I don't consider it, but the PFAS panel have been very clear. They've come out with a level that they think is acceptable from a public health perspective. Jersey Water have indicated all along they feel that they can do the work necessary to get to that level at their 2 existing works at a level of cost of around £20 million per works. And that has always been the position. I don't feel, or rather, if I could say it this way, I think I would feel that as regulator, if I was taking more concern of the cost of doing the work and less concern of the public health implications, might find myself in very deep water. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary, Deputy Parish. Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. Given, as Deputy Stevenson described, the great differences of views from ministers, what mediation or discussion has taken place with the minister and his colleagues since he published the draft water law amendment, as surely his ministerial colleagues would have voiced their concerns about it at the time?
Minister?
Absolutely, sir. We've had a number of discussions privately and in the Council of Ministers about this, but I reiterate that my position as regulator has always been clear, and I was going to put forward the recommendations of the PFAS panel. We have to remember, and we'll come to it in the debate later, but these, the PFAS panel are hugely respected experts in their field. They are dealing here with chemicals and all sorts of stuff which is way beyond my comprehension. And I rely on them entirely to come out with recommendations about safe levels for public health. And that's what they've done, and as regulator, I'm putting forward those to the Assembly. I am perfectly comfortable with the potential for every member of this Assembly to vote against me. And if that's what members want to do, that's fine. But I see my job as regulator to put forward the recommendations of the panel who we've employed. As I say, they are global experts in their field, and I feel bound to put forward their recommendations to this Assembly.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. And I applaud the Minister for trying to do the right thing in the face of such adversity. Just a question about those conversations. At what point, or has any discussion been had about the polluter pays concept and whether ports should be involved in finding some funding for this?
Minister.
So the situation with ports and the airport fire training ground, indeed the airport itself, is a bit of a separate conversation in as much as the fire training ground at the airport is a pollution hotspot. That's the reason why we have a plume area below in St Wands Bay, and that is being addressed through a separate steering group made up of government officers, Jersey Water and Ports of Jersey. They will very shortly have concluded the work they engaged with 7 or 8 months ago, which will come up with the recommendations and their preferred way of remediating the pollution that's happening on that site. At that stage, I would expect ports to be having discussions with government. At the end of the day, government owns Ports of Jersey entirely, but certainly our side of the argument would be that ports took on the responsibility, liability, if you like, for PFAS when it was incorporated back in 2014, I believe.
Final supplementary, Deputy Radcliffe.
Yes, sir. Last week I went to the meeting public meeting that launched the latest interim report from the PFAS panel. And in response to a question from me about the situation with regard to the Jersey Water's objections, if you like, or stated views about the costs, they admitted that they had not taken into account the Jersey Water's views when they published the interim report, and the reason for this was because
Can you get to the question, please, Deputy?
I will, sir, but it is the context of the question.
It's conveying quite a lot of information.
Okay. The question is, given that the PFAS panel have said that they have not taken account of Jersey Water's comments in their recommendations, does he not think that this is a reason why he should revisit the timetable and the proposition that he has brought?
Minister.
So, as I've said previously, I'd like to repeat 2 things. The first thing is that the level of 4 nanograms per litre is a level been recommended by the panel on public health grounds. They've analysed food They've agreed that 20% of your intake of PFAS comes through water, and when you analyse the food, it leaves you with a calculation which then says where the safe level of PFAS in water is set, and in this case it's going to be 4 nanograms per litre. As for the timing, we haven't spoken about derogations, but I've always said that as they do currently have a derogation for nitrates in water, Jersey Water would be very much at liberty to come forward in the future if they can't quite make the timescale for getting this work done, that derogations would be available to them from any minister. So I'm very comfortable with that, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. We will move to the next question, question 6, which will be asked by Deputy Moore to the Minister for Treasury and Resources.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister, as shareholder representative, advise what information, if any, she has received from Jersey Water in relation to PFAS concentrations in wastewater treatment cake, and what discussions, if any, have taken place regarding its disposal? And if no such discussion has taken place, will she explain why not?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Deputy for a question. Sir, I have, of course, had briefings with Jersey Water in my shareholder capacity, and as part of those discussions, the concentration of PFAS in wastewater treatment cake have been mentioned at a high level, as well as potential options and indeed challenges for disposal of that cake. However, the more detailed discussions, which relate largely to operational matters, are and remain best placed with the Minister for the Environment and the scientific panel, who are the experts in the subject. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. I do believe the scientific panel have raised concerns about the wastewater cake, its disposal, but also its storage whilst we wait for disposal, and any potential that it might have been spread in the past on land, which could again contribute to concentration of PFAS in our system. Therefore, what urgency is the Minister placing on finding solutions to this issue?
Well, sir, without going into the debate that we will have later on the Minister's proposition, this is very much part of the ongoing debate. I'm not a scientist. I don't protest any expertise in this. I don't know how far, we haven't discussed how far wastewater treatment cake has been disposed in the past, but my understanding is this is one of the crucial things that has to be looked at going forward. My non-scientific understanding is that treatment cake will absorb PFAS. It will reach a saturation point. We don't yet know, without further testing, at what point is saturation point of that cake, whether that occurs after 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. We also do not have a clear, so that there will be a cost to how often. My belief, which could be wrong, is that it can be cleansed and reused. There would be a cost to doing that, and there's a cost to disposal. These are all things that Jersey Water is still working through in connection with its ongoing work in terms of how we reduce levels of PFAS further. And I would just take the opportunity to remind everybody again, sir, that our water is already comfortably under existing UK and EU standards and is safe to drink. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. And I would like to take back to the original question, and I would like to check with the Minister if, as a shareholder, she has requested formal assurance from the Jersey Water regarding the management and disposal of the PFAS-related materials.
Sir, no. Excuse me. No, as shareholder, I haven't asked for that assurance. That is an operational matter which sits with the Minister as regulator in terms of the ongoing work on reducing PFAS. I have to remind members again that as shareholder, my principal concern is the governance of the company and its financial stability, how that is well operated, operational decisions about what they do on a day-to-day basis. In the case of almost all the state-owned entities, sits with another minister who establishes the policy for that company and monitors policy aspects on a daily basis. That is not the full extent of my role. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary Deputy Gardner.
So I'm sure that Minister would agree that financial stability of the company depends on the operational matters as well. And because the Minister referred to different ministers, with several ministers involved, that the Minister consider that the current shareholder oversight arrangements are sufficient for an issue of this environmental and public health significance?
Minister.
Sir, yes, I believe they are, and the financial impacts are largely why I brought my amendment to the proposition.
Final supplementary, Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. Clearly, there is a conflict here between the financial aspect of the Minister's role, but also her collective responsibilities in terms of protecting public health and the health of islanders. How does the Minister weigh up those responsibilities and decide which is heavier in that balance?
Minister.
So the only way of addressing this, I think conflict of interest is more perceived than real. The only way we can avoid any conflict of interest is to sell Jersey Water and privatise it completely. If we are going to own a water company, then we have to recognise that there is some degree of, we have an interest in how it's regulated. The Minister is responsible for regulation. As he says, this has been discussed at high level at COM, and I am quite sure that, well, the minutes are possibly not that detailed, but I am sure my question at COM would have been, why is Jersey leading the charge? Apparently leading the charge on this. So there are lots of discussions to be had on this, but we cannot, I think it would be rash and irresponsible to agree to a regulatory standard that neither Jersey Water simply cannot afford to meet, or it cannot afford to, it is forced into the most expensive option. But this is prejudging our debate that we will be having later in the sitting, so thank you.
Thank you, Minister. We will move on to the 7th oral question, which Deputy War will ask of the Minister for Infrastructure.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise how consideration of obtaining value for money informed his decision to sell Philip Lefevre House and Huguenot House, and will he explain why the decision was taken to sell the site in two parts, that is, excluding 38 Lamott Street?
Thank you, Deputy. Minister.
Thank you, sir. Thank the Deputy for his question. Sir, value for money is always at the forefront of my mind. I think I've explained in this Assembly that every fortnight I get an update on empty properties, including their rental value and the value of the property. In respect of the question, it is natural that when someone is selling a property, they want to get the best deal possible, and this property sale was no different. To drive the best value, we used an experienced independent external agent and have marketed the properties twice in the past 2 years. I believe we have delivered the best overall value for the Social Security Fund. The property is not being sold in two parts. Lamott Street is being retained and will be transferred in due course to Health and Care Jersey for their ongoing use. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Supplementary, Deputy War.
Yes, sir. Does the Minister recognise that by selling the site in two parts, and I appreciate he's just said we're not selling this part, but the fact is it is being split out, there is a real danger that the site may well be land banked while the developer waits for the adjacent site to come on the market. Are there any mechanisms in place to ensure that the development of the site is not delayed?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, the part of the site that we've retained, sir, is going to be used for very important mental health services, sir, and I'd encourage members to go and see the facility that is currently being served at the back of that site, which will be moving to the front of the site, sir. In terms of the site being delayed, sir, I think the market value dictates, sir, that it is a tough time in the market, and that is why we got the price we got, sir. Thank you.
So that hasn't answered my question about are there any mechanisms in place to ensure the development of the site is not delayed?
Can you help with that, Minister?
Sir, the sale of the property, sir, will see us receive a significant sum on passing contract in court, sir, and then we receive the balance within 6 months of that contract being passed, sir. There is nothing in the contract, sir, to ensure that the development takes place in 6 weeks, 6 months, or 6 years. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. And the Minister just answered part of where I was going to ask on this, but given that the site was zoned in this island plan with designation or anticipation for a type of housing, and that the most recent government plans have also re-emphasised a level of affordable housing provision on that site. And given that the market value was based on those, will the Minister just clarify that, notwithstanding those, there is no protection within the contract of sale to actually deliver what the market value was based upon, and that obviously all things in and around those policies could change, and that his officers have not baked in any protections whatsoever?
Minister?
Sir, the sale has been made, sir, subject to the debate we're going to have later in this assembly, sir, but the sale has been made for freehold property, sir, and any development there will be subject to planning guidelines at the time, sir. Thank you.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister just then further clarify if there is any policy consideration when it came to sale that the site would be providing housing, or whether he considers this just a pure disposal of a site for, well, he describes a large amount, a small amount of 2.3 million, and so I should declare I own and live on the road, and we should declare on questions.
Noted. Minister.
Thank you, sir. So I understand that the site is going to be developed for housing, sir, but that, as I said earlier, will be subject to receiving the appropriate planning. Thank you.
Final supplementary, Deputy Wall.
Yes, sir. I mean, I'm concerned, and I follow up with my colleague here, Deputy Curtis, and is this a kind of sign of a flog and forget approach which is being taken here by the Infrastructure Department? The Minister must recognise that we have sites around town, and I'm not sure if I'm allowed to name them. Am I allowed to name sites around town which are remain undeveloped at this time? We have the old Apollo Hotel site, we have Les Sablons site, so there's a real danger that we yet again end up with another site which is sitting there empty, which is not encouraging people to invest in our capital city. Does the Minister understand why it's important that we get on with these developments and they are developed?
Minister.
So I certainly do, sir, and this Infrastructure Minister has taken decisions to invest in our capital, St Helier, sir, invest in public realms, sir, invest to try and encourage other people, sir, to invest in St Helier, to make it a nice place to live, to work and to visit, sir. And I certainly hope that the sites mentioned by the Deputy are developed as soon as possible. The same Deputy, sir, criticises us for holding on to empty sites, sir. Here we have a fund that owns the site, not Property Holdings. We act as the agent, sir. We have sold the property on behalf of the fund, sir, and we will encourage the bidder, the buyer, sir, to develop as soon as practically possible. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. We will move to a question from Deputy Moore, which she will ask also of the Minister for Infrastructure.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister state where washwater cake material is currently disposed of and whether it is applied to land during or following its disposal, and what assessment, if any, has been made of the associated risks linked to its disposal?
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for her question. Sir, the sewage treatment works produces around 7,000 cubic metres of biosolids each year. Around half of this is incinerated through the energy recovery facility, whilst the other half is spread to agricultural land as fertiliser. Biosolids are analysed and regularly for potentially toxic elements and nutrient value, the results of which are used to inform the risk of each individual piece of land's use, proposed cropping plan and other soil requirements. This use of biosolids reduces the reliance on imported chemical fertilisers. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Supplementary, Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. I believe the Minister missed out the part of the question that asked what assessment has been made to the associated risks. And in asking him to do so, I'd like him to speak to the known concentration levels of 93 milligrams per kilo of PFAS in that wastewater cake.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So I thought I had addressed that in terms of the looking at the nutrient balance of results and the individual pieces of land. So I'm pleased to say that an intervention that was agreed through the PFAS steering group was to stop the disposal of groundwater from boreholes at the airport fire training ground to the island's foul sewer network. Since pumping ceased, monitoring shows that PFAS loading in the sewage treatment works system has reduced by 2/3. Results also show a corresponding reduction in PFAS concentrations in the enhanced treated biosolids produced at Balazan. This matters because reductions in biosolids PFAS concentrations support current handling decisions for the management of the output from the sewage treatment works. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Renouf.
Yes, I think the Minister edged towards an answer to the question I wanted to ask there, but could he confirm, therefore, that PFAS concentrations in that biosolid waste are routinely measured before material is spread on fields so that it can be tailored to the known concentrations of individual fields?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I'm not sure the Deputy's definition of routinely, so I'm aware that there are frequent testing that is carried out, and we've seen significant improvements in those testing results, sir. I should say, sir, that the testing has shown there's no indication that produce from outside the airport fire training ground PFAS hotspot have been affected more than global background levels, sir. Thank you.
Supplementary. Final supplementary, Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. Have any concerns been raised with the Minister regarding the incineration of this waste at the Energy from Waste plant?
Minister.
No, sir. In short, it's not something that I've been made aware of, but I'm happy to go away and check if we've had any feedback, sir. Thank you.
Very well. So we move on to question 9, oral question 9, which the Connétable of St Martin will ask of the Chief Minister.
Will the Chief Minister advise whether any consideration has been given to developing a strategy to identify flexibility within and the ability to make rapid adjustments to the island's key supply chains in the event of future conflicts and developments such as are currently occurring in the Strait of Hormuz?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir, the government continues to actively monitor the impact of the conflict in the Middle East, specifically on Jersey. And whilst we are seeing inflationary pressures, we are fortunate to benefit from strong, resilient and established supply chains from the UK and from France, and these are currently not anticipating any impact upon them. This is, however, a fast-moving situation. The Emergencies Council has a response plan and has established cells to lead on potential impacts, including on supply chains and cost of living matters. The Emergencies Council met again last Friday to monitor developments and will continue to consider what flexibility and adjustments may be required, sir. And a further update to States members is being planned. Thank you.
Thank you. Supplementary.
No, thank you, sir. I look forward to the update to States members.
Deputy Renouf.
Yes, my understanding is that the supply of gas and particularly gas, but maybe also heavy oil, there's a delay between the supply of that material and the prices. In other words, there are tankers still on their way at the old price, but the new price that will be much higher will start affecting us in the next few weeks. Is the Minister therefore taking any steps, or is he aware of any issues that might arise in relation to the supply or price, I should say, of gas or fuel oil?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. As I said, the prices are being monitored closely. The Minister for Sustainable Economic Development and the Minister for the Environment, I understand, following Friday's Emergency Council meeting, are liaising with energy suppliers to ensure that the Emergencies Council is provided with up-to-date information on energy supply chains and energy prices, sir. And of course, we will use all the information to ensure we have a considered response and take any action that is necessary. The short answer is we're not aware of any, shall we say, I'm not sure if the Deputy is referring to additional profit taking, but we're monitoring the situation closely.
Supplementary, Deputy Renouf.
I think my concern is that the prices have not yet fed through, and we may therefore see a price shock coming down the line. And I just would like to know whether the Minister has considered that, particularly in relation to gas, that there may be price shocks coming, and can he offer any reassurance, if he has looked at this, that he believes that we might be insulated from that for some reason?
Chief Minister.
Our supply chain is insulated insofar as we import the vast majority from the UK, and those supply chains are largely unimpacted by the troubles in the Middle East, except for the price. I understand Jersey Gas are making an announcement today about an increase in the gas price. And we have seen small but not insignificant pump price increases for road fuel, sir.
Honourable St Bernard.
Thank you, sir. Given that jurisdictions such as New Zealand, I heard over the weekend, have limited storage capacity of some 40 days, is the Chief Minister satisfied that we have sufficient storage capacity on the island to cope with a disruption of supply chain should they arise? Thank you, sir.
Chief Minister.
Yes, I am, sir, and I have asked officials to investigate the need to hold greater stocks, if necessary, on island as part of the risk assessment, which is a part of the response plan. So that's something that's being considered. But of course, that does come with a price, sir, but we're actively considering that. But it's currently not necessary.
Any supplementary? Any final supplementary content of St Martin?
Thank you, sir.
Well, in that case, we move to the question that Deputy War is going to ask of the Minister for Infrastructure.
I know I'm becoming his favourite deputy. Will the Minister advise what consideration, if any, was given to alternative uses of Philip Lefevre House, including whether consideration was given to the potential for providing green space or reducing housing density in the area?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I don't want to disappoint the deputy, but he's not in my top 20 yet.
Careful, Minister, you might get a question on who's in the top 20.
As a former housing minister, I'm sure the deputy is aware that the use of the site had been agreed by the previous assembly. There were, however, a number of alternative proposals made for the site, and these were given full and serious consideration by the Regeneration Steering Group, including most recently at a meeting on the 19th of November 2025. But generally, they required capital for development and would have resulted in an ongoing revenue burden on the government to maintain. This included a park, sir, and also included the use of the site as a car park. They would also have resulted in a need to reconcile the value of the building to the Social Security Fund. That is why we've proceeded as we have done, which we believe represents the best value for the public and meets our policy of reducing the number of state properties instead of continuing to hold on to empty buildings, which we have no need for. Thank you, sir.
Minister, Deputy War supplementary.
Yes, sir. Can the Minister confirm if any conversations were held with Andium Homes? Because clearly a deal was done on Gas Place with the department for Andium Homes to sell that site. Is there not an opportunity for Andium Homes here to purchase this site and maybe potentially reduce the return to government, which I know Deputy Mezek is so keen to see reduced?
So I'm happy to confirm that both Andium Homes and the States of Jersey Development Company were engaged, sir, to see if they were interested in the site. So neither provided bids, sir, and we are where we are. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you. And I'm grateful to the Minister that he mentioned alternative use which were considered. Would the Minister confirm if the parish representatives were involved and if any engagement was taken with the parish would be willing to take it over?
Minister.
So we did have discussions with the parish, sir, and the parish actually put in a bid, sir. But that wasn't deemed to be sufficient, sir, for the Social Security Fund, the owners of the building, sir, and therefore we didn't proceed with that initiative. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Would the Minister confirm was only monetary value was considered or also social and the well-being values were incorporated into the scoring?
Thank you, sir. I can say that the parish's bid didn't get anywhere near points, sir. But we did give serious consideration, sir, to alternative uses. We are concerned about the density, sir, and that is why we accepted the middle bid, sir, because we believe the density needs to be reasonable, sir, and not overcramped. Thank you.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you. And staying on the alternative uses, the listing says that the use will ultimately be where housing, affordable housing, in the listing with the professional agent says freehold interest offered as a single lot subject to affordable housing development conditions. Can the Minister clarify whether, given those appear not to be in there, that there are no restrictions that the developer could buy, no statutory mechanisms to compel the current use or any use by the future owner?
Minister.
Sir, the site was listed in the Bridging Island Plan, sir, which the Deputy is very familiar with, sir, and any planning application will have to meet the planning guidelines at the time of the application. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Thank you. Will the Minister identify and share with members where in the Bridging Island Plan, under which policy this site was safeguarded for 100% affordable homes? As to my understanding, whilst it may feature in the preamble as a government-owned site, the Minister's assertion that that would be the protection may not be well-founded.
Thank you, sir. I have to give way to my colleague, sir, whose knowledge of the Bridging Island Plan is far greater than mine, so I've not kept up with it since the debate some 5 years ago, sir. Thank you.
Final supplementary, Deputy Ward.
No, sir.
And we'll move to the last oral question, which Deputy Renouf will ask of the Minister for Infrastructure.
And again about Le Creux. Further to oral question 8/2026 and oral question 29/2026, will the Minister provide an update on discussions towards the agreement of a lease for the future use of Le Creux Pavilion?
Deputy Minister.
Thank you, sir. So I'm pleased to confirm that the Le Creux Community Hub and Nursery have been selected as the preferred bidder, and I've asked discussions commence for the agreement of a lease. I've also agreed they can begin engagement and consultation with the community to ensure that their proposed operation at Le Creux maximises community involvement. It is important to be clear, however, that their bid remains subject not only to the agreement of a lease with the public, but also to agreement in respect of the change of use permissions that will be required as part of their proposal. I am, however, encouraged by the excellent potential for this organisation as preferred bidder to ensure Le Creux becomes a focal point for the community engagement, particularly in St Billard's. Thank you, sir.
Minister Supplementary, Deputy Renouf.
Can I wholeheartedly welcome that announcement from the Minister and thank him for it. We will soon be entering a period of non-political activity where these things could easily run into the get kicked into the long grass. Can he provide any reassurance to parishioners and indeed islanders with an interest in this progressing about what instructions he will be giving to officers to help solve problems that might arise over the next few weeks and months prior to the establishment of a new government?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So I'm very aware of the timing, sir, and I, like the representatives of St Ballard, have been keen to see this resolved, sir, but we have a number of challenges. So the department are working closely with the landowner, with the preferred bidder, sir, and I hope that we're going to be able to conclude positively and also that the dialogue with the community, including the parish, will also be productive. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. And I too, as representative of St Brelard, welcome the announcement by the Minister for Infrastructure. Could the Minister please clarify who is going to be responsible for the change of use planning application? Will it be the owner, as in Jersey Property Holdings, or will it be the preferred bidder? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Sir, Property Holdings are the leaseholder, sir, not the owner of the land and building, sir. So Property Holdings are in discussions with the landowner, sir. It will be Property Holdings that would put in any application. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary. Deputy Howell.
Can I just ask one question, sir? Is it a nursery for plants or is it a nursery for children? Thank you, sir.
It's for growing little people, sir.
Children. Connotab of St Brelard.
Thank
Sorry,
you, sir.
any supplementary? No.
Very grateful for the clarification.
Thank you. Connotab of St
Thank you,
Brelard.
sir. I'm grateful to hear the news that the Minister has just announced regarding the direction of travel. And I would just like to understand what the timeline might be, in picking up Deputy Renouf's point, as to when we might see some action or a planning application, should that be needed. Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Sir, the timeline is really dependent, sir, on the landowner, sir. I think I mentioned in the last assembly that they've been on a lengthy vacation, sir. The dialogue, I understand, is underway. We're hopeful, sir, that this will become, again, a great community asset, sir, for all the community. And people like myself, sir, who walk my dog at Le Creux from time to time, sir, hopefully I'll be able to have a cup of tea when I get back from my dog walk. Thank you, sir.
Final supplementary, Deputy Renouf. Oh, sorry, did you have a... No. Final supplementary, Deputy Renouf. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I wonder if the Minister could clarify whether that planning application is something that he anticipates to happen, which could happen during the period of political non-activity, or will it require further ministerial intervention? In other words, is there a possibility that this thing could be stopped in its tracks before it really gets going?
Minister.
So I'm hopeful that the planning application will be going in very shortly, sir. I think we understand what is required, sir, and I'm hopeful that that will happen. But clearly, sir, when anything is subject to planning application, sir, then there is always the chance that it will get stopped, sir. Not everybody agrees with applications. So I should also place on record, sir, my thanks to the team at Property Holdings. They often get a lot of criticism, sir. They are hard-working, dedicated individuals, sir, who do their very best with limited resources, sir, and I've been pleased to work with them. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Well, that brings the period for oral questions with notice to an end. So
if I may, before we proceed, so just ask that the defo that was previously addressed for the Constable St Mary be changed, if that's possible. I just picked up a message he sent last night, sir, saying that he was on State's business with BEPA in Tralee, County Kerry, and assuming flights won't be delayed, he'll be back tomorrow. Could he be marked down as excusé at this stage?
So are members content to mark the Connétable of St Mary defo excusé? Then the Connétable is marked defo excusé. Thank you. Deputy Ayer, sorry, Deputy Ayer first. Waiting for questions, right. Chief Minister.
I'm sorry, did I miss something? We're allowing only an hour for oral questions as well?
No, Chief Minister, that's the end of the list of oral questions with notice. So we're moving to questions
sorry, I thought
without
you said
notice.
we timed out.
No, sir. No, Chief Minister.
It goes very quickly when you're enjoying yourself.
That you will have your usual period of questions without notice, Chief Minister. So in that case, we move to questions without notice. The first question period is for the Minister for Children and Families. And Deputy Ayer, I saw your light first, so Deputy Ayer.
Thank you, sir. What action is the Minister taking to protect children from online harms, and has he had any engagement with other jurisdictions to assess differing approaches to this question? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy Ayer. Minister.
I thank the Deputy for that question. Yes, we have been progressing this since I was given overall responsibility for online harms. Chief Minister has progressed the MD to establish the ministerial group, which met in December. I've written to the chair of the Law Commission, and we will be meeting to discuss, well, we have met to discuss the principle of legislative benchmarking work, which will start shortly. Via the legislation for violence against women and girls, we've updated Jersey's criminal law to include digital harms, amendments including intimate image abuse offences, criminalising the creation of sexually explicit deepfake images, and a number of other measures. We met with the telecoms services from around the island and are in discussions with how we can progress the quality of advice and guidance. Officers have made contact with a number of jurisdictions. However, I think perhaps I should mention that myself and Deputy Gorst had the opportunity to meet with Kanishka Narayan, The Minister for AI and Online Security at Westminster, we went last week to meet with him. We thought it was important that there was ministerial contact. I'm very aware that it'll probably be the next government that will deal with that. And I can say that we're very pleased that he was very receptive to helping us, even though we hadn't taken up the PEC. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Supplementary Deputy I. Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. The Minister has previously told us that there is a review of residential short breaks provision underway and that we were due to expect the publication into 2026. Could the Minister please update the Assembly of the progress of that review?
Thank you, Deputy. Minister.
Yes, we have undertaken a comprehensive review of the current short break.
Microphone, Minister.
Sorry. Yes, you're quite right. We have undertaken a review of short breaks, and I think that was long overdue. We were aware that it was something that needed to be done. Further work has been conducted through engagement with both current and potential providers. The review of current short break provision, including engagement with providers. I am waiting for, actually, I don't actually have the date when, the exact date, but it'll certainly, that will be shortly, and I will get that to you. Out of that, we have noted from that review that there's rising demand. We need to further engagement with the universal providers, and we need to improve the access, and we are working on that. Thank you. So, in fact, I do have the review will be considered by the Improvement Board on the 24th of March.
I thank the
was today.
I thank the Minister for the question. I specifically asked about the overnight respite service, and I wonder if the Minister could address that, and also whether the Minister can tell the Assembly how many children are on the waiting list for an overnight respite service. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers on, off the top of my head of the number of children waiting for the overnight service. It is one of the services which I'm very much aware that we need to improve on. Short breaks has been, as I said, one of those areas that continues to be was a concern to me. And obviously, if there was more time available, I would have looked at it earlier. However, I'm happy to give you greater detail in a written answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Given the Minister's previous statements about the future development of Lascay Youth Centre, will the Minister confirm to young people in St Clement if any specific progress has been made to achieve the 2027 timeline that was set for developing the project?
Minister.
Well, certainly Lascay has not been forgotten about. I think in the Assembly on a number of occasions we have I have explained the reasoning why the St Helier Youth Centre went first, and in fact that when Lascay is being developed, that centre will be necessary. Some remedial work has taken place at Lascay. At this point, I have no reason to believe that that 2027 guideline date will change, but of course that will be in the hands of another government. Thank you.
Supplementary, Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. So the Minister gave an undertaking to make sure that there was some feasibility work done, preparation, and can he give some clarity as to whether any progress has been made on that at all?
Yes, at this point, I don't believe we have started the feasibility. Thank you.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. In written question 45, I asked about the situation with regard to children's services that were being provided by Medway Council. And of course, the head of Children's Services was, I believe, recruited from Medway. Can the Minister confirm that some officers and/or consultants have also been recruited from Medway Council? And can he confirm that due process was followed in terms of the awards of contracts with Medway and whether alternatives were also considered?
Minister.
Sir, I believe that any appointments would be subject to the normal regulation and guidelines, and I have no reason to believe that that has not taken place with respect to staff that have been recruited from Medway. Absolutely none whatsoever. Thank you.
The supplementary?
Before I ask the supplementary, I did ask, can he confirm that due process was followed in terms of the contract with Medway? I don't believe that was answered.
Very well, Minister.
Was the question...
what was due process followed in relation
and
to
whether
contracts
alternatives were conferred
with Medway and whether alternatives were explored?
Due process would certainly have been followed. As I said before, I have no reason to suspect that that would not be the case. I would think in all cases alternatives would have been looked at. Obviously with individual contracts, I'm not totally familiar with them all. However, this is a specialist, a number of these are specialist areas, and I think there would be a limited number of people who would actually apply for some of these positions.
Supplementary, Deputy Rowan.
Point taken, although it would be a surprise if they were only located in Medway. Does the Minister accept that there is a risk, at least, that an officer surrounds themselves with people who they may know personally, may be personally loyal, but that might expose the department in terms of if that person were to leave, then we are in a situation where the recruitment has been based around one particular person rather than around the needs of the department?
Minister.
I don't really believe that a recruitment is based around one particular person. I don't believe that in any way it affects the stability of the department. It is clear that people in, staff in Medway have certainly become aware of children's services through that connection. I think going back, if we move back to where many of these posts were filled by contract staff, I think that was a far greater risk. And we come back to the fact that in many cases there are very few people who will come forward for these posts. Thank you.
Deputy Tadier.
Thank you, sir. Further to his comments last month, could the Minister give an update of where his department is with regard to fostering and adoption services, both in terms of the service but also in terms of ensuring that there are enough families in Jersey to provide fostering and adoption?
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Yes, I'm happy to do that, sir. The fostering service does have its challenges, as it does across the whole of the UK, where people coming forward who wish to foster and actually then engage with the service and follow through with the training have become more and more limited. The service currently has 17 fostering homes, 5 connected carers and 3 specialist short break carers. During the last year, the service has actually reduced in total by 10 foster carers or foster families. These include 6 resignations. Two of the people became staying put carers, where the young people stay with them over the age of 18. One adopted one of the children, and 1 carer was deregistered by the service. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary, Deputy Tadier.
So is the Minister planning any new drives to raise awareness of the benefits and rewards for people engaging in fostering and adoption in Jersey? Does he think it needs to have more of a push?
Yes, as you're probably aware, we had a number of campaigns last year. There was a great deal of interest. However, the interest falls away quite rapidly into the number of people we actually ultimately train. The latest campaign was actually for states employees, which we may have seen on our screensavers recently. That has resulted in 3 people coming forward as potential new carers. And I think that those are looking quite encouraging.
Thank you. I've got 3 more questioners, but only five more minutes for this minister. So the Connétable St Martin.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister update the Assembly on the St Helier Youth Centre and what progress, if any, is being made? Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. During December 2025, we purchased the site, and in early January 2026, the development contract was signed between Dandara and the government for development of Belmont House and the Brew House building in Ann Street, because it is now, in effect, 2 projects. Belmont House is being developed for the Yes service, and that is due for completion in January 2027, and I'm very pleased about the rapid progress on that. The Brew House, the youth centre, is due for completion in March 2028. Monthly meetings are taking place between the government and Dandara have already moved onto the site and started work.
Thank you, Minister. Any supplementary?
No, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. The Minister will be aware that Brighter Futures are holding an early intervention matters conference today. One of the speakers is the Chief Executive of the 1001 Critical Days Foundation, and he is seeking parliamentarians across the world to sign a declaration which states, "We believe that every baby should experience the best start in life." Will the Minister join with myself and Deputy Tadia in signing this declaration?
Minister.
I would be quite happy to do so. I'm due to visit the conference at lunchtime today. It's unfortunate that it's coincided with the Assembly. I think the start of a young person's life is the most important part of their life, actually, and I would have no hesitation in signing that. Thank you.
Supplementary, Deputy.
Thank you. As he reflects back on his time in office, could the Minister describe to members how he has progressed the issue of early intervention in early childhood?
I think that we have recognised the need for early intervention. I think it's sad that I became Minister, and very shortly afterwards there was an inspection report that said prior to that time, in fact, early intervention had not really been taking place in the way that it should. We are certainly addressing that. It's sad that what we see coming through now are older children where early intervention simply had not taken place, and that's very sad. And the outcomes, unfortunately, for those children have been less than positive, but it is something we certainly have addressed and continue to address.
Deputy Kovac, I think we've just got time for you. Or is it saying 16? Ah, so it is. Very well then. Well, sorry, I was going by the clock up
Can I ask
on
the question and the Minister can respond in writing?
In writing, very, very quickly then.
It's just an update. So in June 2024, the Assembly agreed my proposal to evaluate with consultation, making the youth service statutory by March 2026. Can the Minister update on progress, confirm whether this deadline will be met, and if not, explain why, provide the timeline, and assure the Assembly this commitment will be upheld? Thank you.
In writing, Minister. Thank you. We'll move on to the second period of questions without notice, and that is for the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning. plenty of questions. I had Deputy Coles light on first. Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister provide his assessment of town primary schools in the Greater St Helier area and provide his expectations of what these schools should be in the future?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Deputy for the question. Yes, the two town primary schools in particular, Springfield and St Luke's, desperately need replacing. The plan for the new town school will not only replace those schools with fit-for-purpose facilities for the first time for a long time, but it will be the first school built with community access in mind and become a real asset for the local community. That school will also provide, for the first time, a fit-for-purpose facility for those primary school students from La Passerelle School. So that project is absolutely vital for those schools. All other schools in town face challenges regards repairs and where they are. Some are a lot better than others, but without those two new schools, nothing else, without that new school project, nothing else can move on because it has been a blockage for far too long. But I'm pleased to see, sir, that repeatedly the Assembly has supported that project. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary, Deputy Coles.
Yes, sir. Can the Minister outline what he believes is the biggest issue surrounding the current schools in their states and how it impacts on students and their learning?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Deputy. There are a number of things. For example, we have recognised the increasing need in our schools, not just in terms of SCND that is formally recognised, but the needs of our children in general. One of the problems we have is a lack of space, sir. And that lack of space means there are not the sort of breakout areas and the areas that can be to enable that one-to-one and that significant support for young people and our children in our schools that allows them to access the curriculum. Space is a really important issue, let alone the modern facilities that are recognised as being best for our children, sir. So I would suggest that there are numerous others, but I would pick that one out in particular, first of all. Thank you, sir.
Deputy I.
Thank you, sir. Last year, the Minister increased thresholds of grants for higher education by 5.2%. Is it his intention to do the same this year before he leaves office? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. The student grants, is the Deputy referring to the maintenance grant or the grant for fees? Because they are two different things. I'll answer both. So both will go up according, the fees will go up according to the fee increases in the UK. That has been set for future reference. So that's a simple thing for any minister to be doing now. And grant fees, maintenance grant amounts will go up according to UK inflation because the vast majority of the money we give is spent in the UK and that's where the costs are. So yes, they will be taking place. They have been linked to inflation. Yes, sir.
Deputy I, supplementary.
Yes, sir. How does the Minister intend to fund those increases? Is there enough resources available? Thank you, sir.
So yes, there are resources available. It's a complex figure, but it is a figure that is certainly manageable. They are vast increases in terms of inflation, but yes, they are part of the long-term planning for the fund that supports that costing. Yes, sir.
The next question is Deputy Wall.
Thank you, sir. So the Best Start Partnership was established in 2022. To quote from their website, brings together the voice of children and families with representatives from the public-private community and voluntary sectors in development, implementation and evaluation of government strategy and policy. I understand from an article published yesterday in local media that the partnership has been dismantled and the independent chair's contract has not been renewed. Can the Minister explain the rationale for this decision?
Yes, thank you, sir. Yes, and thank you for the question. I would say to the Deputy, don't believe everything that you read. I think it was Bruce Springsteen who said, don't believe half of what you hear or none of what you read. The Best Start Partnership is far from being dismantled. Indeed, sir. I can announce that there is a new chair. I'm not going to announce the name because I don't think it's fair yet until that's finally agreed. But we met recently, and that is a new beginning, if you like, for exactly the reasons and the use of the Best Start Partnership that we want to have. And so I believe that we will be asking for a correction of the JEP for that article. Thank you, sir.
That actually answers my question. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. Population projections show that the island is heading towards a large surplus of primary school places, potentially up to, I think, about 900 surplus primary school places. Can the Minister outline what work is underway to deal with this, whether this might involve school closures or amalgamations or any other response that he's currently working on?
Minister?
Yeah, thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for the question because it's a really important issue. Those demographic changes are not even across the island. So, for example, St Helier suffers, if that's the word, less from those significant decreases. The biggest risk, if you like, is to some of the country primary schools. What we have done gradually is that you can go from 2-form to 1-form entry in schools, sir. That assists the situation as it arises. We have to take account of migration as well because we do have a significant number arriving with families, and that may also increase. The collective, what we've announced recently, sir, of schools grouping together in order to work, I think is another issue that we can, another way in which we can address that. Personally, sir, I see that the decrease of class size as a positive. And if we keep the money in the system and enable those decreases in class size with the increase in need, and so we have to take account of the increase in need of our children, then that can be a real positive for us. I don't envisage the closing of schools soon. In the long term, whatever minister is in this post will have some difficult decisions to make long term. Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary, Deputy Ronoff.
Yes, 900 places is about 30 classes, I think. I mean, can the Minister confirm, excuse me, sir, can the Minister confirm that his preferred option, first of all, is to say improve pupil-teacher ratios rather than to keep pupil-teacher ratios as they are and then potentially have closures?
Thank you, sir. Yeah, absolutely, sir. I think as we look forward in education, what we've learned in the last few years through the reports that we've commissioned, that as need increases, class size really does matter. So does the facilities that our young people are in. Decreasing numbers in poor facilities are still children in poor facilities, sir. So improving those facilities, regardless of what's happening for numbers of our children, is very important. And so every investment we make in that comes back tenfold with the ability and the success of our children in our future economy and, importantly, most importantly, their role in our society, sir.
Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. And staying on the theme, will the Minister provide more information to parents about what the new operating model, which will link primary schools into clusters, will look like on a day-to-day basis for children and families? Will they notice any differences day-to-day?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Initially, there will be no notable negative differences seen by schools. This is about the operation of schools and indeed increasing the access to facilities across schools. What they may see in the long term, is an improvement in what can be provided. So, for example, if there is a shortage in one area of teaching and in another area there is an excess of those skills, they can be used in other schools. So you should see an improvement in the skills base of all of the teachers available and also the provision of opportunities in our schools. So I hope it's a positive outcome. It is a 2-year initial trial. We have to remember that. If things are not working, don't keep doing them. That's a really important thing. And whatever minister is in this role, I would really urge them to not have any fear of saying, no, we're going to do something different. I think that's a really positive thing to do. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary?
Yes, thank you, sir. Again, staying on the theme, I think we're working quite nicely together on our questions today. But is the Minister aware of any learnings from the last time such a model was implemented? And will anything be done differently this time to improve it?
Thank you, sir. I'm not sure which model we would compare to. There's a lot of learning from models in the UK, which I would not bring on board. I do not believe that the academisation of UK schools has been as successful as people think. I think it's created a lot of competition that is not necessary. We are effectively a significant but small local authority comparison. We have the ability here to get our schools working together for a collective approach where the basis of that is simply the well-being and the best opportunity for our children. And I think this is the beginning of those attempts to take that on at face value and actually make those changes. So I think this is a unique model. I think it's had good input from from head teachers. Now we need to move into schools and we need to listen to teachers. But I will say, sir, and of course I'm biased in this, the professionalism of our teachers is the most vital thing that we need to respect, and we need to let them do their job because they are very good at it. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister be meeting with the 1001 Critical Days Foundation and signing their declaration that states we believe that every baby should experience the best start in life?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I believe I do have a meeting in one of the lunch times. So, yes, in terms of signing a declaration, yes, sir, we can sign a declaration. It's very easy to sign declarations, but what it's not easy to do is to deliver those commitments. I would say that in the last 2 years, I've worked hard to deliver as many commitments as I possibly can. So signing declarations is fine. We can all do that. But so I think it's a question of how we make those declarations come true. And I hope that future assemblies and future ministers don't go down the line of austerity, because that does not work for our children in their first 1001 days.
Supplementary.
I thank the Minister for his answer. What advice will he be giving to his successor in regards to making sure that early intervention matters?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Well, a number of pieces of advice. First of all, please do not change the nursery provision and build upon it, because I think that is a really important part of early intervention. The second thing is about providing, there was much wider than education. I would suggest that any government needs to work to make housing affordability a reality. The cost of living crisis needs to be addressed, and we need to think really carefully about those who can contributing all that they can, and taking the pressure off of others. So it's a much wider question than just education. But I think the facilities that we build, the drive towards keeping money in the education system, even if we have less children in it, is the one way in which we can really push to have the best start for all of our children way into the future.
Thank you. Well, we have 3 minutes left. Not sure. Well, Deputy Wilson. Deputy Wilson.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Can the Minister confirm if the development of the School Partnership Initiative has the agreement of all head teachers? And if not, why not? And if all schools are not involved, does he consider that any significant issues may emerge when it comes to planning teacher-pupil ratios and recruitment of teachers?
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. I believe that when the head teachers went out to the members, over 80% were in favour, so you're always going to get, I think any survey that gives you 100% yes, probably wouldn't be believed anyway, to be quite frank. In terms of the headlines regards to head teachers unions, UK unions and local unions, as a previous union leader, I completely understand that sometimes those communications can go slightly awry, but that's an issue for the trade unions, sir. But I think it is positive. In terms of those schools that are not involved, at the moment we are not involving the fee-paying schools or Holyoke and Highlands, because I think we need to look wider. But if you are going to start a project to get collaboration between schools, let's start where we can actually take those actions early on and see the success that comes from those. This is a new model, but it's a model that is about driving the use of the skills and the abilities that we have to the best we possibly can for the well-being of our children into the long term, sir. That's the underpinning notion behind this. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary, Deputy Wilson.
Thank you. The Minister mentioned about strengthening skills and developments. Does he envisage taking any steps to strengthen the partnerships between Skills Jersey and Highlands College in the longer term to ensure that vocational training aligns to some of the developments in the partnerships?
Thank you, sir. So I would say that Skills Jersey is already very aligned at Highlands College. It is now based in Highlands College, so it's the first one-stop shop there. There is a new principal of Highlands College being interviewed for this week, actually. And so obviously that will be an important relationship. Skills Jersey does an enormous amount of work with the information that is needed and the information regards apprenticeships, how many there are. There's about 460 at the moment that are going on. And an example of where it's been successful is the launch of the Green Skills Academy, which was recently announced, where a need is recognised. It worked with Highlands College, it worked with the JEC, all of those things were brought together in order to provide this longer term solution to an identified shortage in our provision across the island. And remember that that provision, for example, and this is why it's a good example, is not simply for JEC, but it's for the industry as a whole, so it becomes a training centre. So I think Skills Jersey has the ability to do those things already, but of course, the more integration there is, the better, but that is growing, I believe so. Thank you.
I'm afraid that brings to the end the second period of questions without notice. So we move on to questions without notice to the Chief Minister, and Deputy Renner, if your light is on first. Deputy Renner.
Thank you, sir. Does the Chief Minister support recommendation of the report by Deputy Scott into the complaint system, which says a JPSO should be established as a matter of priority?
Chief Minister.
In principle, I do support the set up of an ombuds person, but of course not at any cost, sir.
Supplementary.
An independent ombudsperson was first recommended by Clothier. Jersey Law Commission made the same review recommendation in 2017. In 2018, the Assembly voted to establish it. A public consultation in 2019, briefing paper in 2022, a Law Commission follow-up report in 24, and now Deputy Scott's excellent report. Yet we still haven't implemented the recommendation that has been consistently supported by every expert body. How would the Chief Minister explain this failure to the Jersey public?
Chief Minister.
Well, first of all, I say, sir, I admire the Deputy's level of commitment to his understanding of the matter. But there has been no failure. Unlike past governments, sir, we have kept this moving forward. As per the state's discussion earlier on in the term of this government, we said if we were going to change course on it, we would come back to the Assembly. I asked Deputy Scott to do a report on it, which he has now done, and I thank her for that. It's a thorough and comprehensive report, and I very much hope, sir, that will support and advise the next government, and they will proceed with what is recommended, sir, subject to them to agreeing to the detail. So I think we've kept it going. We've provided budget for it, sir, so the work can actually start.
Next is Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. And I'm going to ask the Chief Minister the same question that I asked the Environment Minister earlier. Will the Chief Minister provide clarity about the government's long-term strategy on PFAS levels in drinking water? As without it, how does he expect the public to have any confidence in any new legislation or the ability to meet the requirements it will set, let alone in public health?
Chief Minister.
At a high level, sir, the government strategy and policy is to reduce the levels of PFAS in line with the advice of our scientific panel. It's currently sitting, sir, and that's what we are working towards.
Supplementary.
Yes, thank you, sir. Has the Chief Minister had any discussions with the Environment Minister asking him to withdraw his proposition on PFAS limits in drinking water, pending further collaborative work between ministers, Jersey Water and other stakeholders?
Chief Minister.
Not directly, sir, but there has been comprehensive discussions at Council of Ministers where this has been discussed, and the Environment Minister has been clear. He's been clear to the Assembly, he's been clear to the Council of Ministers that as a regulator he made an undertaking to bring this forward, and that's exactly what he's done, and I support his position to do that. Or having said that, sir, I think as members know, there's not total agreement across the Council of Ministers, which is why we have some amendments, and of course in situations like this where we don't agree, we fall back to the wisdom and democratic process of this Assembly. Thank you.
Deputy Wall.
Thank you, sir. So I was approached by a very concerned employee from Aquasplash who still awaits any communication from the government as to whether their job will be safe when the government takes over in October. What reassurance can the Chief Minister offer them with regards to job security?
Chief Minister.
Well, sir, I'm led to believe that when the government takes over, the existing staff will be re-employed.
Supplementary.
Yeah, so would the Chief Minister agree with me that the disappointment of the relevant government departments' lack of engagement with employees around the impact of the government takeover? I'm advised they only knew about the takeover through media outlets Will the Chief Minister ensure that future communications happen sooner rather than later?
Chief Minister.
Well, so I can say that the matter was discussed at States Employment Board yesterday, and I would ensure that communication is appropriate, sir. And we look forward to welcoming Aquasplash into the portfolio of the active unit, sir. Thank you.
Deputy Tadier.
Thank you, sir. I understand the Chief Minister has relatively recently taken over as Chair of Age Concern in Jersey, and would he be able to answer in his capacity as Chief Minister whether there are any considerations around policies for the elderly in Jersey which he thinks need greater attention that perhaps have not had the attention they need up until now?
Chief Minister.
I think members will know when we look at our demographic forecasts that thankfully a welcome statistic is that we're all going to live longer. We want to make sure that society and the states provide the facility and support, especially medical support and social support to support a growing, ageing population. So I think moving forward, future governments will need to provide more focus into that, sir. That's a view, I think, shared at the heart of, I know it's not part of the question, of the charity Age Concern.
Supplementary, Deputy Tadier.
Thank you, sir. Whilst many old people will be quite technologically able, sir, does he accept that there are certain conditions which will increasingly affect the elderly disproportionately? And given that, if he does agree with that, has he had any chance to solicit or to canvass experiences of the elderly and Age Concern, perhaps also when it comes to the use of cash and the acceptance of cash in Jersey for the provision of goods and services?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. Well, I recently had lunch with members of the Age Concern at the charity's headquarters in Vale Place, or the week before last, where we discussed a number of matters, this being one of them. Largely, the people I've spoken to, as I, and I think many members want to see the continuation of cash. Some members of the senior community weren't that bothered. They're more tech savvy than others. And of course, as we all get older, in 20 years from now, well, I will certainly be an octogenarian, hopefully, if I'm still here. And I think generations of us getting older will be more tech savvy. But the government, and we're going to have a discussion and a debate about this later, supports the use of cash, sir, but think it's helpful to do more research and carry out a review before we impose any legislation. Thank you.
So next I had Deputy Gardner, followed by Deputy Moore and Deputy Miles. So Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. And follow the response to Deputy Renouf question. I looked at the history of public ombudsman. First it was raised in 2000, 2018 was political decision, 2023 everything was ready to launch, and in 24 we would establish public ombudsman. And now, Chief Minister, could Chief Minister explain how these 2 years and review that he conducted end up with no public ombudsman and no commitment to the public?
Chief Minister.
Yes, sir, as I've explained on a number of occasions, the Council of Ministers are not united on this issue. There are mixed views, which is one of the reasons I asked Deputy Scott to carry out the comprehensive review she has done. That was published a couple of weeks ago. It's been a lengthy piece of work because there's been a lot of work which has gone into it. Like I said before, I hope this guides the next government into moving forward.
So would the Chief Minister agree that this review was just a delay and to get over 2 years?
No, sir. I hope members will realise that when we make a decision, we take that without hanging about, sir. And if this Council of Ministers had wanted to not proceed, we would have brought a rescindment motion to the States Assembly. We didn't do that because we wanted to get more details, which is what Deputy Scott has provided us with.
Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. I'm aware that the Chief Minister is aware of some social media activity by one of his ministers that can only be described as offensive. One particularly targeted a Secretary of State. What action has been taken in relation to this social media activity and its breach of the Code of Conduct?
So I'm not aware of any social media activity that has been by ministers that has been offensive, sir, or breached the ministerial code of conduct.
Supplementary, Deputy Miles.
Sir, as I stated, I'm aware that he is aware, and I would like him to answer the question, please.
No, sir, I would ask Deputy Moore to withdraw that. I said I am not aware of any offensive social media comments made by ministers. I'm not lying, sir. She's insinuated that I am, and I think that should be withdrawn.
Well, I think you've answered the question, Chief Minister, so we'll leave it at that. So, Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. And I return to the topic of the Jersey Public Services Ombudsman, which has been a concern for our scrutiny panel. And indeed, if the Conotab of St Mary was here, he'd be jumping to his feet to ask plenty questions. Does the Chief Minister accept the report's conclusion that the complaints panel has fundamental structural weaknesses?
Chief Minister.
Sorry, sir, I just missed the first part of the question.
So does the Chief Minister accept that the complaints panel has fundamental structural weaknesses?
In general, was the Deputy relating to a specific case?
I'm referring to the evidence presented in the report, sir.
Sorry, that's a bit I missed. She's talking about Deputy Scott's report.
Yes, sir.
Okay, right, thank you. Sorry, I missed the first half of
yes.
What she said. Well, first I want to place on record our thanks to the complaints panel. I think they do, on the whole, a very good job, but the Deputy has highlighted both strengths and weaknesses in the current system, so with which I generally concur.
Supplementary, Deputy Miles.
Sir, I asked the specific question, does the Chief Minister accept the report's conclusion that the current panel has fundamental structural weaknesses? It's a simple yes or no, sir.
Chief Minister.
Well, sir, I did say I concur with the findings of the report, so I guess that's a yes.
Well. Deputy Renouf, did you have a question for the Chief Minister?
If nobody else has one.
Well, I'm not aware of any others, so... Oh. Well, Deputy Renouf, then Deputy Coles.
Can the Chief Minister say how much notice the Environment Minister gave him before lodging his proposition to set new PFAS standards in the public water supply?
Chief Minister.
I can't remember, so I think it was not a lot, so I think we talked about it a day or two before it was lodged. And I made it clear to Deputy Luce that we needed to take this to Council of Ministers at the next meeting, which was some days later, which we did, so thank you.
Any supplementary, Deputy Renouf?
Yes, so given the ministerial code says that executive members shall adopt a no surprises approach regarding announcements, does the Chief Minister think that the Environment Minister kept to the provisions of that code, and does he not think it would have been more appropriate, given that he has just said he wanted it taken to the Council of Ministers, for that lodging to have been postponed until after the Council of Ministers had discussed the matter?
Well,
Chief Minister.
No, I don't agree with that, sir. The Environment Minister has been clear for some time of his intention to lodge that, and the fact we put the matter before the Council of Ministers for discussion, and ministers were informed of its lodging, and the fact that we put the matter before Council of Ministers and have since discussed it thoroughly on a number of occasions has led to some good democratic debate on the matter. So robust discussions around the Council of Ministers, and we find ourselves in a position here where we're going to debate that with amendments, so which I think is a good part of the political process.
Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. And as this is the last opportunity for me to get to ask Chief Minister a question, I thought this is the right time to ask it. Is the Chief Minister aware that putting two microphones on doesn't make him in stereo?
Doesn't make him, sorry?
In stereo.
In stereo, right. Very well. Chief Minister.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. Just to use up the last 90 seconds, back to the Jersey Public Services Ombudsman. The report also states that reforming the panel would cost as much as creating a Jersey Public Services Ombudsman. Does the Chief Minister dispute that conclusion?
Chief Minister.
I'd need to look at those figures a bit further before answering that question.
I also had Deputy Wilson. Oh, sorry, did you have a supplementary, Deputy Miles?
I did have a supplementary,
sorry, I beg your pardon. Yes.
Thank you. Does the Chief Minister accept the finding that the current system has lost public and officer confidence?
Chief Minister.
Not totally so. I think there's been some loss of confidence, but I think there still are levels of confidence in some of the work. So,
And Deputy Wilson, you've just got time.
Does the government have an agreed position on public protection when it comes to PFAS? And if so, why are there amendments to the regulator's proposals to uphold public protection from the Council of Ministers?
the government is aligned with the scientific panel on the direction of travel. So the debate is about the timelines, and the cost.
Supplementary, briefly.
Thank you, sir. Does the Chief Minister accept that the strength of concerns about PFAS are related to public protection? And how will he balance his duties as shareholder as well as regulator in this debate?
Can I refer my answer to the exact answer that the Treasury Minister gave earlier on, sir, and reiterate that our drinking water, sir, provided by Jersey Water is comfortably well within the limits. And very safe, sir.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Well, that concludes questions without notice. So we move on to statements. There's no personal statements, but there is a statement on a matter of official responsibility. So the Assistant Minister for Sustainable Economic Development and the Assistant Minister for External Relations will make a statement concerning her review of the final stage complaints against public services. Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. In October 2024, the Chief Minister tasked me with leading the next phase of developing a final stage complaint handling mechanism to reform or replace the current States of Jersey Complaints Panel. This included reviewing the case for establishing a Jersey Public Services Ombudsman. The report was published on government's website last Friday. Firstly, the report identifies the admirable efforts and dedication of past and present volunteer members of the Jersey Complaints Panel. Secondly, the report recommends urgent progress of Proposition P32/2018 to replace the Complaints Panel with a Jersey Public Services Ombudsman Service, and that further policy work include the development of a roadmap for implementation. The report has identified and addresses two main objections to the establishment of a public services ombudsman: the grounds of cost and a perception that the main need for our community is for the complaints panel to have teeth. The Administrative Decisions Jersey Law constituted the complaints panel in 1982. 35 years before the July 2017 report of the Jersey Care Inquiry exposed one of a number of critical gaps in complaints handling against public services. Children's voices were not consistently heard within government, and systemic failures within government were going unchecked. The cost of that inquiry was reported to be in the region of £23 million. The recommendation of the inquiry that Jersey establish an independent Jersey Children's Commissioner was implemented, but this role is not the same as a Children's Ombudsman. Broader governance, systemic and cultural flaws within government have been the focus of Jersey's Controller and Auditor General, who was established in 2014. Unlike a public services ombudsman, this statutory watchdog does not inquire into the handling of individual complaints, nor seek to resolve them as a final review process before potential judicial review. In October 2017, Jersey's Law Commission published a report recommending the establishment of a public services ombudsman with a wider scope. The following year, the States Assembly supported Proposition P.32/2018 to effect this, brought by Deputy Joseph. Jersey's Children's Commissioner, established in 2019, is not an ombudsman. Her investigation powers are confined to actions or omissions of a relevant authority providing services to children that infringe or adversely affect the rights of children and young people. The Children's Commissioner may also assist a child or young person in making a complaint to relevant authority and inquiring into its progress. Unlike a public services ombudsman, she does not investigate individual complaints and cannot make findings on individual cases of maladministration, nor does she have power to recommend remedies in specific cases or function as a formal dispute resolution body. Our Children's Commissioner has worked in the Office of the Ombudsman for Children in Ireland. This is a hybrid model, handling both advocacy and final investigation of individual complaints. Conversely, in both the UK and New Zealand, these two functions are split between a Children's Commissioner and a Public Services Ombudsman. In my report, I recommend not only a single ombudsman, but also a rationalised complaints handling landscape to improve islanders' experiences while reducing public sector costs. The administrative justice principles upon which a regulatory authority, a court tribunal, or a public services ombudsman investigates a complaint differ substantially from the format of a scrutiny hearing administered by the GREF. The state's greffier serves the panel as an administrator rather than a professional investigator. The complaints panel is an anachronism in the context of modern privacy rights. Its methodology and resourcing no longer conform with international modern standards of administrative justice. These aim to ensure complaints are invested adequately and parties are heard fairly, even in the absence of a public hearing. Complaints handling mechanisms can be weaponised against public officials. Our local press often acts as a voice for islanders, along with easily accessible states members. It is not appropriate for government machinery to allow grievances to be aired in matters of public reputation without a robust safeguarding structure. Policy officers and I have received many emotive submissions from different people who have engaged with public services and the complaints panel. Unlike the format of a scrutiny report, and more in line with a report of the Controller and Auditor General, my report has kept this content private while publishing the anonymised results of a public consultation that supports a complaints resolution service consistent with the service provided by a public services ombudsman. This statement has outlined what now could be perceived as a history of administrative resistance towards the implementation of P.32/2018. I would advise present and future states members to be mindful of conflicts that could be perceived to compromise suffice on this matter. There is evidence that nearly all recommendations of British Public Ombudsman are implemented and have driven improvement in public services. Thank you, sir. I now would be happy to answer any questions from members.
Thank you, Deputy Scott. So there now follows a period of 15 minutes for questions to the Assistant Minister. So the first light I see on is Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. And can I thank the Assistant Minister for a very thorough and very well-written report. One thing I think that would be helpful to clear up is, can the Assistant Minister say why the report was not published as a government report? It's not listed on the government's report website.
Deputy Scott.
Sir, I'm confused by the question because the report has been published on the government website, so perhaps the Deputy could explain a bit more what he's referring to.
I may be wrong, sir, but I haven't seen it published as an R.
Deputy Scott.
Sir, I cannot answer that question. I suggest that is directed perhaps to the Greffe or somebody else. I have no idea.
Any supplementary, Deputy Renouf?
I've got another, I guess, related question relating to the reception of the report. The government's chief executive has in the past spoken out against the establishment of new bodies because the administrative burden is too great for a small jurisdiction. I paraphrase roughly, I think. Can she explain why she takes a different view?
Deputy Scott.
So I respect the Chief Executive Officer's attention to the need to contain public cost, and indeed my report acknowledges that. I believe that there has been certain resistance, and that's one of the reasons why I say one has to be mindful of potential conflicts when it comes to approaching these issues. It's never particularly easy for organisations to have any sort of watchdog. It would seem that the Chief Executive believes that the service is good enough. I hope that my report explains why I differ on that score.
Thank you. Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir, and I'd like to join Deputy Renouf in thanking Deputy Scott for a very comprehensive report and also for publishing the consultation. Just picking up on the theme of resistance from those defending the current complaints panel, a common argument is that the panel simply needs more teeth. And I wonder if the Minister could tell us what her analysis shows that the issue is not enforcement powers, but credibility, methodology, and outdated legal foundations. Thank you, sir.
Scott.
Sir, I thank the Deputy for her question, it's very key to the issue in terms of how the perceived problem with the complaints panel has been identified. This matter has actually been explored by the Law Commission and in a previous public consultation, and there is a constitutional issue regarding having any official who basically is unelected and telling ministers what to do. And the public consultation very much supported that recommendations should not be enforced by an unelected official against an elected official. Nevertheless, the research has shown that the recommendations of public services ombudsmen in British jurisdictions generally are accepted. In the course of this research, I did a lot of interrogation into the reasons why recommendations weren't being accepted, and indeed the process whereby they were actually produced was part of the problem. And the report highlights some of these issues regarding process, although some of them are nothing new. They might have been addressed. For example, agreed statements of fact that actually assist in terms of investigation.
Scott, I hesitate to interrupt, but the question was specifically in relation to lack of teeth for the complaints panel. So
yes.
Can you focus your answer on that, please?
So indeed, the extent to which officials regard the methodology to be fair and reasonable is a factor in this. On the other hand, it's not just officials who have had difficulty in understanding Jersey Complaints Panel's decisions. Members of the public who have not had their cases brought to the panel have not felt they've had clear enough reasons to understand why that is the case.
Any supplementary, Deputy Miles?
Yes, thank you, sir. And that was resistance from those defending the current complaints panel, but there has been some resistance from internal bodies within the States Assembly, and indeed the Comité de Connotar has opposed parish inclusion in the Jersey Public Services Ombudsman. I wonder if the Minister could maybe help with what she thinks lies behind this resistance and how she would propose to address the concerns that the Comité have in a constructive way.
Deputy Scott.
I would suggest that Comité simply read the report and understand why that basically given the options of having the Jersey complaints panels processes extended to them as opposed to a public services ombudsman, why they would choose, I believe, to have a public services ombudsman that uses a different methodology and is more discreet and does not actually potentially damage reputations in a way that would not be acceptable in other administrative processes. In addition to otherwise, they need to consider why would they resist any sort of review before a judicial review.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Balash.
So I want to follow up that question on teeth, because one of the primary findings of the Deputy is that the existing panel lacks teeth in the sense of being able to compel ministers to accept its findings. Is it correct that the Deputy is not proposing that the new Ombudsman should have teeth either?
Deputy Scott.
Sir, in fact, it's not correct to say that I have found that the panel does not have teeth. I have said that there is a perception it does not have teeth. Insofar as the actual question comes down to, does it need to have teeth, if in fact its recommendations were simply accepted by government on the basis that they have been reasonably formed and are reasonably made. And my finding is that there are a fair number of cases where that hasn't been the view, sometimes in terms of the actual restricted scope of the panel, but sometimes in terms of its methodology. One of the things that the report does recommend is that the public ombudsman might well have a position in terms of making findings in terms of ethical conduct that could actually result in disciplinary consideration within existing government processes. And I believe that could actually at least give the public some comfort that ethical issues are being addressed in that way.
Supplementary, Deputy Balash.
So would the Deputy not accept that the real problem is with a failure on the part of some ministers, and I expressly exclude the Chief Minister, from showing respect to the findings of the panel? And what is going to be the difference if ministers continue to treat an ombudsperson in exactly the same way as they treat the panel?
Sir, I don't accept that ministers don't respect the panel, and in particular the panel members. Indeed, my experience of interviewing ministers and public officials is indeed a respect for the panel members, but more of a concern in terms of the processes. I will actually say that I personally have attended a hearing of the panel, which actually gave me more insights into its methodology and its impact on the people who actually participate in it. And it has led me and to inquire at times into the well-being of, at least one occasion, into the well-being of those who actually participated. I would say no more than that.
Constable of St Brelard.
Thank you, sir. The Assistant Minister referred to costs in the report. The Chief Executive has repeatedly mentioned that he didn't think that we could afford the cost of an ombudsperson, and I tend to agree with that. What would be her observations on the costs and the reality of the costs being proposed? Thank you, sir.
Deputy Scott.
So my observations would be that there has been a cost-benefit analysis done as well as it might be in terms of some lack of data that has found that the actual tops would be 1.5 million a year if health were included. And that one needs to put this into a perspective in terms of a children's commissioner that was incorporated as a children's commissioner rather than a combined role, an auditor and controller general, and the costs of those, which already are if you add those to the costs of running those offices together, that is equal. On top of that, you might actually add the costs of running certain other agencies that have been set up, which have in some cases duplicate areas. In other cases, there are gaps. My report suggests that, or recommends that these gaps should be addressed, these duplications should be addressed, because then, in conjunction with the introduction of a Jersey Public Services Ombudsman, we will have a more efficiently run system, and complaints will be handled more effectively and more satisfactorily for the public whom we all serve.
Any supplementary comment?
Yes, so from that answer, would the Assistant Minister confirm that there is the potential for there being a net negative cost or net additional cost, or if those elements you mentioned were combined, the costs would be to the public neutral?
Sir, I have explored this because, as the Constable points out, that some of the costs to the public organisation that I have identified has been in terms of the cost of responding to cases that are brought before the complaints panel in the way that information is provided to them and evidence is not evaluated in the way that some other processes might be. In addition to that are the costs that can be saved through settlement. I noticed that there was one case mentioned today in the health sector which did lead to a settlement. So it is quite true to say that there is quite a potential offset there. But unfortunately, there wasn't sufficient data to give precise figures to these. So the policy officers did research into the operations of ombudsmen in different jurisdictions to make a comparative evaluation of costs in that respect. And I remain of the view that in terms of the social benefit and the efficiency benefit, and indeed even the management of our own times as states members, because we often are the resort of people for whom complaints haven't been adequately handled, and in fact, often more than one of us at the same time. So I would advise members to think of this bigger picture. Thank you.
We have just over a minute left. Deputy Renner.
Yes, just one other point. The focus has been on complaints so far, but another aspect of the report was the role of the Ombudsman in what's known as own initiative reports, where the Ombudsman investigates an area of administrative concern. Does the Assistant Minister agree that own initiative reports are perhaps the key to delivering value for money in terms of making an Ombudsman work for the island?
Deputy Scott.
So they have been found very helpful where ombudsmen have been used in other jurisdictions. I do believe that simply reviewing individual complaints is useful, and my experience in interviews with government officers has been that they have taken recommendations of the panel seriously, but unfortunately there have been quite a number of cases where perhaps there hasn't been sufficient inquiry into processes, and that could be to do with the limited time of volunteers and indeed the actual process by which investigations are made.
There is the opportunity to extend this period of questions by a further 15 minutes. Very well, we will move on. So before we get to public business, the Assembly will need to make decisions about whether to reduce the minimum lodging period for quite a number of matters that are listed as public business in the order paper. I counted that there were 9. The first item where members will need to consider reducing the minimum lodging period is the draft Dogs Law Amendment Regulations. And Chair of the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure scrutiny panel, Deputy Jeune, do you wish to make the proposition?
Sir, I wonder in the interests of proceeding at pace, and members may disagree, if you could, perhaps we could take them on block, if you could read them all out. It seems to me perfectly reasonable that it's the last sitting, so we should take all of them, but we have to have the process whereby the Assembly agrees.
Yes, so the test that members have to consider in terms of reducing the minimum lodging period is it in the public interest to do so? So the Minister for External Relations is suggesting, in the interests of time, that I read out the list of, I make it 9 items of public business that members can consider reducing the minimum lodging period. So I will read those out, and it may be that members are content to reduce the minimum lodging period for all those items, or it may be that members will wish to debate some of those items individually. So I will start, we'll take it logically. I'll start by reading them all out. So the first item, as I said, is the Draft Dogs Law Amendment Regulations. The next item is the Draft Water Law Amendment Regulations. The third item is a second amendment to the Draft Water Law Amendment Regulations. The fourth item is the Draft Road Traffic Law Drug Driving Jersey Amendment Regulations.
Sir, that's withdrawn, sir.
Oh, thank you. Yes, that's withdrawn. Very well. Then the fourth item is the Draft Wills and Succession Probate Jersey Amendment Law. The fifth item is the Draft Mental Health Capacity and Self-Determination Amendment Law. The sixth item is the Draft Companies Amendment Number 2 Law. And then the seventh item is the Channel Islands Lottery Distribution of Proceeds 2026 proposition. And the final item is the deferral of land transaction Philip Lefevre House and Huguenot House proposition. So those are now the 8 items that members can consider reducing the minimum lodging period in the public interest. So is that a proposition, Minister?
I make that proposition, so it seems to me that all of them can be argued as being in the public interest. Thank you.
Is that proposition seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Tadier.
So I know that we're coming to, this is the last sitting, and there's a haste to be more expedient, sir. And it is right that if we, on the balance of public interest, we think it's right to reduce lodging periods, sir. But I do think doing it en bloc this way actually takes away the onus from each minister or each mover of the proposition to explain, A, why the propositions have been lodged late and why they think it is in the public interest to reduce the lodging period. And so, whilst it might be pragmatic to take these en bloc, I think it's incumbent on every minister who's bringing forward any of these propositions to explain to the Assembly why it's not just a general reason to take these, but why specifically these need to be taken now and why they couldn't roll on to the next Assembly, sir. We do also have to remember that there is a corollary to lodging such late propositions in this term. Not only would they not normally be in time, but secondly, there isn't the time for scrutiny to do its job necessarily. I know scrutiny might have scrutinised some of these already. There might have been real-time scrutiny. Sometimes things come up in debate which were never envisaged, which might get referred to scrutiny. And so, of course, it is there is a risk in lodging late anyway, sir. But I think those are the only points that I need to make. I'm not going to hold these up, sir, but I do think we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that ministers do need to make the case and not take the Assembly for granted.
Thank you, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. I respect entirely the position the Deputy is taking, but from my point point of view, looking down the list, it's not only ministers, it's also scrutiny and private members. I can see the reasons why in each case these have been lodged. Some of that's perhaps because I'm on scrutiny and therefore able to have a bit more background to them, but I cannot see that if we debate them independently as shortening lodging periods that we will come to any other different conclusion other than voting them for all to be debated, and on that basis I'm happy to take them en bloc.
Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Minister, do you wish to reply to the...
If I may, sir, and I'm obviously grateful for Deputy Tadier's intervention. He's right to make the point. If I take my own piece of legislation, the Draft Companies Jersey Amendment number 2 law, I'm very grateful, sir, that his scrutiny panel have scrutinised that and are supportive of it. And I also think, sir, that all of the other amendments, members know how busy they are and how busy the GREF has been in supporting members to get these amendments into the States, and we're grateful for them. So I do think it is in the public interest to take them at this sitting. So thank you.
I close the debate. Are members content to show, the proposition is to reduce the minimum lodging periods for all 8 items of legislation. Those members in favour of the proposition kindly show. And the proposition is adopted. So then we move to the first item of public business, the draft animal welfare law, and I call upon the greffier to read the proposition.
Draft Animal Welfare Jersey Law 2000, a law to make provision about the welfare of animals and to regulate the keeping and use of animals for connected purposes. The states, subject to the sanction of His Most Excellent Majesty and Council, have adopted the following law.
Deputy Jeune, is it for you to make the proposition? No. Yes, I beg your pardon. It's lodged by the Minister for Environment. And for the purposes of the debate, the main respondent will be the chair of the Environment and Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel, who is Deputy Jeune. But the debate resumes following the adoption of the principles back in January, and then a referral to the Scrutiny Panel. So we're dealing with this proposition in second reading. So we begin with the debate on the articles in second reading, and there are 3 amendments for consideration. 2 amendments that have been lodged by the Minister in relation to Articles 40 and 34, and then there's one further amendment from the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel to Articles 1, 17, 18 and 34. So in relation to the articles, Minister, do you wish to propose the articles as amended by your 2 amendments, Minister?
Thank you, sir. I think I'd propose to have a speech. I'd like to propose the articles en bloc. I obviously accept the 2 amendments I brought myself, and I would suggest after my proposition en bloc we debate the scrutiny amendment. I'm not sure.
Well, first, can we ask members if they're content to take the articles as amended by the Minister?
No, sir. The scrutiny panel is not content for the second amendment on Article 34 and would like to debate that separately.
Very well. But the first amendment you're content with, Deputy Jeune?
Yes, sir.
Very well. And then in terms of the amendment from the scrutiny panel, Minister, are you accepting the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel's amendments?
I'm not, sir.
Very well. So in terms of the articles, then we will consider, do you propose the articles as amended by your first amendment, Minister?
I do so, yes.
Is the proposition, are the articles as amended by the First Amendment seconded? Yes. Thank you. So, Minister, I invite you to propose the articles as amended by your First Amendment.
Thank you, sir. Sir, as members will remember, this Assembly voted unanimously in favour of the new draft Animal Welfare Jersey Law in the first reading on the 22nd of January this year. That vote in principle allows the new legislation, which is designed to replace the outdated Animal Welfare Jersey Law 2004, to move forward to final approval today, hopefully. In January, we all agreed that the outdated Animal Welfare Law needed to be replaced with new, modernised framework, strengthening the island's ability to prevent neglect and cruelty to animals. Jersey's current law is based on older UK legislation dating back as far as 1911. That UK legislation has since been replaced by a 2006 Act, meaning Jersey's framework no longer reflects modern scientific, ethical or veterinary standards. The current law, therefore, is no longer fit for purpose. The draft new law aims to incorporate up-to-date welfare standards based on the UK, EU and wider international best practice. It's intended to ensure Jersey meets contemporary expectations on animal care, protection and enforcement. The new law aims to shift Jersey from a largely reactive model, acting after harm occurs, to a preventative system that actively reduces the risks of animal suffering. This aligns with modern welfare principles that focus on meeting animals' needs before problems arise. Yes, change is difficult and sometimes uncomfortable, but in this case, we're all agreed that change and improvement are necessary to protect animal welfare in Jersey. We now have a deeper understanding of how animals think, feel, and depend on us. We have new scientific knowledge, new best practice, and new expectations from the community about how animals should be treated, whether they are family pets, working animals, or livestock. This new law embraces that progress. It gives us clearer responsibilities, stronger protections, and a more modern system to ensure animal welfare comes first. It replaces outdated provisions with practical, thoughtful measures that reflect the reality of life today. Updating the law is therefore not optional. It's essential for Jersey to maintain credibility and high standards of animal care. There have been some concerns about licensing by order. As I've already noted, the draft Welfare Jersey Law aims to move Jersey from a reactive model, acting only after harm occurs, to a proactive, prevention-based system aligned with modern UK and EU standards. A licensing system is a key tool in achieving that shift by clearly setting conditions before animals are placed at risk. Orders allow this system to be implemented more efficiently, quickly, and to be flexible in response to any changes or trends. There are several precedents in doing licensing by order already, including, for example, the animal health importation work, which talks about aquaculture fish, shellfish, horses, and other exotic animals. Or, similarly, import controls dealing with animal matters such as dangerous dogs, cow's milk, bumblebees, bovine semen, and others. Licensing is intended to benefit business and their customers, to set standards for a business to meet, and can benefit society generally by enabling changes to the welfare of animals. The amendment to Article 34, proposed by my scrutiny colleagues, while unquestionably well-intentioned, considers only the potential burden on owners and operators and doesn't really improve welfare for animals. The Animal Welfare Law is about improving animal welfare and ensuring welfare standards are guaranteed and not assumed. Keeping animals for whatever purpose should be seen as a privilege, and owners and keepers have responsibilities to ensure animals are kept to the highest welfare standards. By supporting this law, we are not only protecting animals, we are strengthening trust. Trust between farmers and the community, trust between pet owners and the authorities, and trust between charities, agencies, and the people they serve. The law encourages better cooperation, clearer roles, and higher standards across the board. It offers tools that allow us to intervene earlier when animals are at risk, rather than waiting until harm has occurred. It ensures that Jersey remains aligned with international standards of welfare and responsibility, and importantly, it sends a message to future generations: respect is one of the values that shapes our island, after all. So I now propose to provide a quick summary, as quick as I can, overview of the 7 parts of the law as amended by myself in parts 1 and 2. Part 1. The articles 1 to 4 cover interpretation, the meaning of animal, activities to which this law does not apply, responsibility for animals, and provide specific meanings for a range of terms to ensure universal understanding. There's a ministerial power to extend the meaning of animals to include other species if there is scientific data supporting that. The law will not apply to anything that occurs in the normal course of fishing and other activities specified by order. In Article 4, the owner will always be responsible for an animal, as will a person who is in charge of an animal at the relevant time. The draft animal welfare law mirrors English legislation, Scottish equivalented legislation, and the Isle of Man as well in definition of the responsibility for animals. Part 2, sir, the Articles 5 to 10 detail offences against animals. These begin with offences of causing or allowing another person to cause unnecessary suffering to an animal, including a wild animal. Article 6 makes it an offence to carry out a prohibited procedure, which is a procedure that interferes with the tissue or bone structure of an animal unless carried out by a veterinary surgeon or a procedure exempted by order. Article 7 makes it an offence to carry out a restricted procedure, one that might cause suffering or lasting harm on an animal, without a licence, and the definition of an animal has been expanded to include fetal and embryonic animals. Article 8 enables a restricted procedure to be lawfully carried out if the person acts under the authority of a licence issued by the state's veterinary officer and the restricted procedure related to the conservation of one or more species. The state's veterinary officer may set conditions under that licence. Article 9 makes it an offence to abandon or neglect an animal, and Article 10 makes it an offence to sell an animal to a person under 16. However, it shall not be an offence if an adult agrees to be responsible for that animal. It is also an offence to offer an animal as a prize. Part 3 refers to the Articles 11 to 13 and relates to the protection of animals. Article 11 makes it an offence for a person responsible for an animal to fail to take reasonable steps to ensure the needs of the animal are met. Animal needs of 5 freedoms, and these are firstly, the suitable environment; second, a suitable diet; third, that the animal can exhibit natural behaviour; fourth, freedom from pain, injury and disease; and finally, a freedom from fear and distress. Article 12 makes provision for improvement notices to be issued if a person is failing to take steps required by Article 11 or otherwise failing to comply with a requirement about animal welfare. An improvement notice issued under this article may be issued by an inspector, and this includes a police officer. Article 13 makes provision for taking possession of an animal that is suffering. If an inspector believes an animal is suffering, the inspector may take steps to alleviate or prevent the suffering of that animal. If the inspector believes the animal is likely to suffer, then, if a veterinary surgeon confirms the inspector's belief, the inspector may take steps to alleviate or prevent the suffering of the animal. Part 4 includes Articles 14 to 17 and lays down the detailed processes for when dealing with livestock straying into a public place and the meaning of a public road. Articles 14, 15 and 16 provide definitions that can be amended by order, makes it an offence to fail to secure livestock and to cooperate with inspectors if livestock stray into a public place, and gives powers to police and inspectors in relation to straying livestock. Article 17 makes provision for improvement notices to be issued in relation to straying livestock. The bar set under this article for an improvement notice is higher than that in Article 11, because a veterinary inspector must confirm to an inspector, including a police officer, that livestock is at risk of suffering or being injured as a result of straying into a public place. The improvement notice may be served on the person responsible for the livestock. Part 5, sir, refers to Articles 18 to 20 and enables the Minister to make an order setting up a licensing scheme for an activity that requires a licence. A person acting under a licence must keep a copy of that licence and produce it on request by an inspector, and the law makes it an offence to provide false information in relation to applications for a licence. Article 6 deals with Articles 21 to 33 and details powers for inspection and enforcement. Article 21 provides for the designation of inspectors and veterinary inspectors. Articles 22 to 26 give inspectors a wide range of powers, including power of entry and further powers once entry has been made. The bailiff or jurat may grant a warrant authorising an inspector to enter premises. An inspector may exercise powers to enter a premise or a vehicle if the inspector has reason to believe that an animal is experiencing suffering and immediate action is required to alleviate that suffering. For example, an animal appearing to be overheating in a car. These powers are considered crucial to the ability to exercise adequate and sufficient control when dealing with the most serious animal welfare incidents known. They require inspectors to have reasonable suspicion before application, and for exceptional circumstances, a veterinary inspector to carry out an assessment and, if deemed necessary and proportionate, licence, exempt or prohibit a person from animal welfare legislation to ensure the welfare of an animal. Articles 28 to 33 give the court power to remove an animal from a convicted owner and to make a consequential order, and to make provision for a person disqualified from keeping an animal or from holding a licence to apply to have that disqualification removed. Gives the court powers of seizure and forfeiture. Article 31 and 32 make it an offence to contravene or fail to comply with any requirement of animal welfare legislation, and sets out the deterrent penalties provided to the court for offences, and setting out again how they can be calculated. Article 33 gives the court power of seizure and forfeiture of any vehicle, animal, weapon, instrument or other thing used to commit the offence. Part 7, sir, refers to Article 34, and it's an order-making power providing ministerial powers to enact secondary legislation to meet Jersey's obligations based on the UK and EU law and best practice to protect animal welfare. This is the most efficient and effective means of ensuring we remain current in our application of these obligations. Certain matters previously included in the 2004 law will be updated, expanded and set out in orders. These include the animal fights, use of poisons, exemptions from prohibited procedures, licensing of animal activities, businesses and animal sanctuaries. The amendment rectifies a typo, substituting B by C in Article 34, paragraph 2, to ensure the cross-reference is correct. It's also amended by the addition of Article 34, paragraph 5, making it a legal requirement for the Minister to inform the scrutiny panel before making orders under the law. But we will come to that when we get to the panel's objection to my second amendment. Article 35 makes provision for the Minister to issue codes of practice. The present codes will be moved under the new law and updated as necessary. Article 36 makes provision about the use of samples so that they can be used to protect or promote animal welfare, animal health, or human health, Article 39 revokes the Animal Welfare Law 2004 and 2 orders about poisons and fees. The Animal Welfare Calves Jersey Law 2020 continues, and animal welfare licences issued under Article 18 of the current law continue until they expire. The amendment, one of my first amendment, adds a second paragraph to Article 40 defining animal shelter in the Dogs Jersey law, and is now to be read as: animal shelter means a place, including a private dwelling, that regularly receives for the purpose of temporary or permanent accommodation with or without the provision of treatment abandoned animals, animals separated from their keeper for any reason, or animals previously living wild in Jersey that have been captured because they are injured or sick. This is a consequential amendment, doesn't change any substantial requirements, if any, of the laws. The amendment allows the Jersey law, Dogs Law 1961 to be updated. Finally, there's a standard citation and commencement provision. Sir, I hope members would agree that these changes are proportionate and sensible, as well as modernising. They are designed to be, and by voting in favour, we would affirm that Jersey is a place where animal welfare matters are important. I wholeheartedly support this new animal welfare law, and I encourage members to do the same. Not because it's easy to do, but because it's the right thing to do. Having, keeping and caring for animals is not a right, it's a privilege and a responsibility, and I ask members to support this in the second reading. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Are the articles seconded? So we will deal first with the third amendment from the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel, and I will ask the greffier to read the amendment.
Page 16, Article 2. Article 1. In Article 1, A, for the definition animal welfare legislation, substitute animal welfare legislation means A, this law and regulations and orders made under this law, and B, regulations or orders dealing with animal welfare made under the European Union Legislation Implementation Jersey Law 2014. B, after the definition premises, insert restricted procedure is defined in Article 7, 4 and 5. 2, page 25, Article 17. 1, delete Article 17. 2, renumber the subsequent articles and cross-references accordingly. Article 18, 1, in Article 18, renumbered as Article 17, for paragraph 1, substitute 1, the states may by regulations specify activities relating to animal welfare that must not be carried out without a licence. 2, regulations under paragraph 1 must not specify an activity that is A, a restricted procedure, B, authorised under regulations or orders dealing with animal welfare made under the European Union Legislation Implementation Jersey Law 2014. 3, the Minister may by order make provision for a licensing system for the grant of a licence required by regulations under paragraph 1, including A, the procedure for 1, applying for a licence, 2, amending or varying a licence, 3, revoking or suspending a licence, 4, appealing a decision made in relation to a licence, B, the conditions of the licence, C, any fee payable in relation to the licence, 2, renumber the subsequent paragraph accordingly. Article 34, in Article 34, renumbered as Article 33, A, after paragraph 2, insert 3, an order must not specify activities relating to animal welfare that must not be carried out without a licence. B, renumber the subsequent paragraphs accordingly.
Thank you. So I invite Deputy Jeune as Chair to propose the third amendment.
Thank you, sir. So I will be taking these amendments in 2 sections to be voted on. First, focusing on part 2 of the amendment, which looks at Article 17 of the draft law on livestock straying, and then taking together parts 1, 3 and 4 of the amendment, which focuses primarily on Article 18 of the draft law of orders, on orders, which is the substance of our amendment, but then parts 1 and 4 try to clean up, and there is more of a technical amendment to that part 3. So first I'd like to deal with the panel is asking members to support the deletion of Article 17, which deals with the improvement notices. And why? So part 4 of the draft law introduces new offences relating to straying livestock, and it also allows inspectors to issue improvement notices where livestock are considered at risk because of the condition of boundaries or fencing. Failure to comply with such a notice would become a criminal offence, punishable by up to 6 months' imprisonment and a fine. We carefully considered the evidence on this issue, and we heard consistent concerns from across Jersey's agricultural and conservation sectors. We received submissions from the Jersey Farmers Union, the Reserve Farm, Jersey Milk Marketing Board, Royal Jersey Agriculture and Horticultural Society, and the Conservation Grazing Group. While these organisations represent different parts of the sector, their concerns were remarkably consistent. All stakeholders felt the proposals were disproportionate and misaligned with Jersey's farming context. They told us that livestock can and do stray for reasons beyond the keeper's control. Storm damage can bring down fencing, animals can be chased through boundaries, and in many cases, livestock are grazed on land where the keeper is not the landowner and does not necessarily control the fencing. Yet under Article 17, an improvement notice could still be issued to the livestock keeper, even where they do not own, control, or have the ability to repair the boundary that has caused the problem. Members, that creates a very real risk of criminal liability being placed on the wrong person. The panel also heard important evidence from the Honorary Police. They explained that straying livestock is not unusual, but that it is generally managed effectively. When livestock stray, the keeper is contacted, and in most cases they respond quickly and responsibly to retrieve their animals. In other words, the existing system largely works. This raised an important question for the panel. Why escalate this issue to the level of a criminal offence carrying imprisonment? The Minister explained that the purpose was to demonstrate that we're taking the issue seriously. But seriousness in legislation should not be demonstrated simply by creating new offences. It should be demonstrated by ensuring that the law is targeted, proportionate and workable in practice. So the panel is particularly concerned about the improvement notice mechanism under Article 17. If a livestock keeper receives such a notice and cannot comply, perhaps because the fencing belongs to a landowner, they could face criminal sanctions. And yet the draft law provides no clear right of appeal or review against such notices. So we would have a situation where someone could be placed at risk of criminal liability without a clear route to challenge the notice, even if the responsibility for the boundary does not lie with them. During the ministerial hearing, the Minister himself acknowledged that some form of recourse would be reasonable and indicated he would consider this further, and the panel agrees. However, that safeguard is not currently in the legislation before us today. Evidence submitted from conservation organisations explained that on some sites, particularly steep or ecologically sensitive landscapes, traditional fencing is neither practical nor environmentally appropriate. Conservation grazing plays an important role in managing Jersey landscapes and biodiversity. There was genuine concern that these provisions could undermine those operations if improvement notices are issued in circumstances under conventional fencing, fencing simply cannot be maintained. The panel's amendment therefore removes Article 17, meaning inspectors would no longer be able to issue improvement notice specifically linked to boundary conditions that cause livestock to stray. However, and this is important, sir, the wider improvement notice powers remain in place. Under Article 12, and we heard from the Minister in his summing up earlier of the whole of all the articles, under Article 12, inspectors can still issue improvement notices to any animal keeper or landowner who fails to take reasonable steps to meet an animal's welfare needs in accordance with good practice. So the ability to protect animal welfare is not removed. There is also Article 11, the duty to protect animal welfare. A person who is responsible for an animal commits an offence if they fail to take reasonable steps in the circumstances to ensure the needs of the animal are met, for example, a suitable environment, or need to protect from suffering, injury and disease. This would, of course, come into play if animals consistently stray onto main roads, a very different welfare risk for the animal when wandering onto Rue de Fliquet, for example. What we are doing is removing a provision that risks placing criminal responsibility on individuals who may neither have caused the problem nor have the ability to fix it. So legislation must reflect the realities of how land is managed, our island's complex land ownership arrangements, shared responsibilities and diverse landscapes. Laws that do not recognise these realities risk being unfair to practice and difficult to enforce. And the panel believes that Article 17 could create unintended and disproportionate consequences. There are still clear duties and improvement notices to protect animal welfare under Articles 11 and 12. So for this reason, Chair, I'd ask members to support the panel's amendment and vote to delete Article 17. The second section of the amendment is that the panel is asking members to support the amendments proposed by the panel to Articles 18 of the draft law, with Articles 1 and 34 being technical amendments to follow, which deals with order-making powers. Why? This is related to parts 1, 3 and 4 of our amendment. It relates to changing the licensing of activities to be brought by regulation instead of orders, and specifically relating to Article 18, which is under Part 4 of the draft law, establishing licensing frameworks. At the heart of this amendment is a simple principle. Significant regulatory powers should be subject to appropriate democratic oversight. The panel fully supports the intention to modernise Jersey's animal welfare legislation and introduce licensing frameworks where they're necessary and proportionate. Licensing can play an important role to ensure high welfare standards and reasonable practice within animal-related businesses. However, the panel's concern is not with the concept of licensing, but with how the draft law allows those licensing schemes to be created. As currently drafted, Article 18 allows the Minister to establish licensing schemes for any activity that requires a licence through ministerial order. This means large parts of the future regulatory framework could be introduced through ministerial orders alone. This issue emerged as one of the most common concerns raised during the panel's review, and which is far broader than the stated policy intent for licensing schemes only for businesses. The JSPCA raised particular concern that future orders may not necessarily be subject to consultation, assembly debate, or scrutiny review, while the Jersey Farmers Union simply noted that these powers could allow significant new regulatory provisions to be introduced without the level of oversight that members might expect. The panel also received submissions from animal service providers. For example, Spotted Wellies, a local animal service business, highlighted the uncertainty created by drafting of Article 18. They told the panel that while they support the idea of modernising licensing, there is currently no clarity about which activities would require licences, what fees might apply, or how other licences would need to be renewed. For businesses operating in this sector, those questions are not minor. They can have a direct impact on their livelihoods and operating costs. And during the ministerial hearing, the panel explored the potential scope of Article 18. We asked whether, as drafted, the provisions could allow a future minister to introduce licensing requirements for keeping of animals where none currently exist, including, for example, domestic animal keepers, the imposition of licensing fees, or establishing licensing schemes covering the ownership of animals more generally. The Minister and officers acknowledged that, in theory, the wording could allow any such schemes to be introduced. Officers emphasised that this was not the policy intention and that licensing was intended to apply only to animal businesses, not private or non-commercial keepers. However, sir, and this is important, the difficulty is that policy intention is not the same as legislative wording, and as currently drafted, the law does not contain that limitation, and no wording in Article 18 limits these powers just to commercial operators. The panel considers that this is a gap between what is intended and what the law actually allows, which presents significant risks. Licensing schemes are not minor measures. They determine who can operate, under what conditions, and at what cost. They can create real regulatory and financial obligations for businesses and service providers. Yet order-making powers within this draft law are extremely broad enabling key parts of the framework to be introduced without any consultation, assembly debate, or mini-finger scrutiny, as I've said before. The non-exhaustive list of future orders that we have seen, that the Minister has also mentioned, only reinforces how open-ended these powers are. Given the potential scale of impact, the panel does not consider it appropriate that such schemes should be created solely through ministerial order without guaranteed assembly oversight. So I would ask members, sir, to cast their minds back to the last sitting when we debated the licensing scheme for food businesses. There were concerns, particularly around fees, and the panel ourselves brought that concern to the members, but members had a clearer understanding of how that scheme would be developed. It had been shaped through consultation with the industry, and while not every detail had been resolved, the overall structure was viable and understood. This is not the case here. An entire sector of animal-related services and potentially impacting on private individuals could be brought into licensing through ministerial order alone. The Minister would not need to return to this Assembly to debate the scope of any schemes before they're introduced. That creates uncertainty for those affected and risks material impacts on livelihoods without proper oversight. The panel's concerns were further reinforced by a recent example that arose during our review. Earlier this year, or late last year, a ministerial order reduced the bird registration threshold from 30 birds, so focusing on businesses specifically, to 1, which brings in private individuals. This came to public attention only after the fact, with limited communication over the Christmas period. The Minister acknowledged that communication had been poor and that the full practical impacts had not been fully considered. Yet the penalties attached included up to 2 years' imprisonment and a fine. I was contacted by individuals with just a small number of chickens for domestic use who were understandably alarmed, not by the principle of registration, but by the way the change was introduced, the lack of awareness and the severity of potential consequences. For some, there were even professional implications if they were unknowingly in breach. So this is exactly why robust oversight matters. The panel's amendment offers a balanced and practical solution. It does not remove the Minister's ability to introduce licensing schemes. It simply ensures that this Assembly determines which activities require a licence through regulation. Once that scope is agreed, the Minister retains full flexibility to manage the operational detail, application processes, conditions, fees, enforcement. That is the right balance: democratic oversight on scope, ministerial flexibility on delivery. And as we saw with the food licensing debate, it would still be preferable for any future scheme to be brought forward with a clear overview so that members and those affected understand the system and can identify any unintended consequences. This approach preserves the flexibility needed for effective regulation while ensuring that the fundamental decision about what requires a licence, what and who requires a licence, remains with this Assembly. So the panel recognises that ministerial orders are often the most appropriate mechanism for technical welfare standards, where responsive and flexibility are important, and this is outlined in Article 34. And the panel is not amending Article 34 for this matter. We're specifically focusing on the creation of licensing frameworks, particularly those that may affect entire sectors of animal-related activity, which requires a higher level, we believe, of democratic oversight. And therefore our amendment restores this balance. Given the scale of potential impact on businesses, private animal keepers and livelihoods, such powers should not be left to the Minister's discretion alone. So the panel proposes to amend the draft law to change the ability for any activity that requires a licence to ensure that the Assembly retains its proper role in determining the scope of licensing. So for clarity, sir, while the substantive focus of this amendment in this particular part is part 3, amending Article 18, there is also the supporting technical amendments in parts 1 and 4. Part 1 introduces a standalone definition of restricted procedure with the interpretation article, as the term is now used more broadly across the draft law, and that ensures clarity and consistency. And Part 4, when it makes explicit that the Minister cannot use order-making powers to specifically when activities require a licence. So for this reason, Chair, Sir, I would ask the members to support the panel's amendment for part 1, 3 and 4. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll be taking it in 2 parts to ensure we can both vote specifically on livestock straying and Article 17 and this specifically on Article 18.
Thank you, Chair. Is the third amendment seconded? Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak on the third amendment? Minister.
Thank you, sir. And before I start my written speech, can I just say a few words about chickens? It is the registration of chickens. It's not a licensing scheme for chickens. It's a registration of chickens. I take the opportunity to apologise to those people who keep chickens in Jersey for the way the change was communicated before Christmas. I say that, sir, because it's not very many years ago where every chicken in Jersey had to be registered. We relaxed the rules because the threats of health and disease to chickens very much abated and made it easier that the number of chickens over 30 needed to be registered. But more recently, diseases for animals and pests and diseases are becoming more prevalent, especially for birds, and I felt it necessary to reintroduce something we'd had previously. I changed the order very naively, not informing enough people about it, so it's been done with the best of intentions, sir, but I could have announced it better. But leaving that aside, I just want to stand now to say that I'm not supporting Scrutiny's amendment. I thank my colleagues in Scrutiny for the time afforded and the attention that they've paid to this draft law. It's important to begin, however, by stating clearly that, as I said, I'm not going to support what they're proposing. The intentions are well-meaning, but the reality is that introducing changes without fully considering the broader implications risks creating a legal document which is a little inconsistent, unclear, and in some cases difficult and unworkable from an operational perspective. We really do need to consider the legislation as a whole, not as a collection of isolated fixes. If we adopt the amendments that resolve to respond to perceived shortcomings rather than reinforcing the legal framework already put in place, we risk undermining the very protections that these laws are designed to provide. As the Chair has already said, sir, the proposed amendment from Scrutiny basically falls into 2 parts. The first about Article 17 improvement notices, and then the other bit relates mainly to Article 34. Talking to the first point, can I just say the proposed amendment to remove Article 17 refers to the service of improvement notices if and only a veterinary inspector confirms to an inspector or a police officer that livestock is at risk of suffering or being injured as a result of straying into a public place because of the condition of the boundaries of the premises on which the livestock is kept. This article was included in the draft law to offer additional assurances in the case of straying livestock. Improvement notices can be served by inspectors under Article 12 if that inspector believes there's been a failure to protect animal welfare. But by removing Article 17, where an improvement notice may be served but needs a veterinary inspector input regarding the potential for suffering, any inspector can now serve an improvement notice under Article 12. Article 17 was added to the law with a purpose, to be effectively a safeguard measure to prevent an inspector, including a police officer, acting independently and who may not be fully informed in serving that improvement notice when the livestock have strayed. It requires a veterinary inspector to consider that the animals are indeed at risk of suffering due to straying into a public place. Article 17 indeed limits the ability of an inspector to serve an improvement notice for straying. In practice, this proposed amendment from Scrutiny makes it easier for an improvement notice to be issued for straying animals, but does not achieve or change anything positively. Surely we must agree that a keeper is responsible for keeping their animals safe and remove them to safety as soon as possible, and surely we've got to agree that a keeper is responsible for ensuring that threats to animals' welfare and animal safety should be minimised. Animals are capable of such responsible thought. So surely too their keepers are responsible for ensuring animals don't escape onto public roads. It is the keepers who have to take measures to ensure such threats are mitigated against and not to happen again. The second part of Scrutiny's amendment around the Article 34 and the insistence from Scrutiny panel is that licensing must be done under regulations excluding the restricted procedures. This proposal specifies that the states may by regulation specify activities relating to animal welfare that must not be carried out without a licence. Any activity involving an animal can be deemed to be an activity relating to animal welfare. The proposed amendment doesn't look to improve animal welfare as such, purely relates to the protection of business and keepers, and ironically, could be to the detriment of animal welfare standards. This is not about animal welfare, this is about people's comfort. Change isn't easy, but it's often necessary and required to be done in a timely manner. The Minister needs the flexibility to act quickly in response to fast-moving welfare issues and or changes, including response to international trends and ensuring consistency with the UK, and for many reasons also includes trade and non-commercial animal movements. For example, the UK government is strengthening controls on the puppy trade in response to puppy farming concerns, and we would be expected to have similar controls due to the nature of our free trade between the UK and Jersey. We cannot have Jersey acting as a backdoor for something like puppy smuggling. Not implementing equivalent controls on puppy imports may jeopardise free movement from the UK. Scrutiny's proposed amendment considers mitigation for some of the comments received during their review, but to my mind, unfortunately doesn't consider the law as a whole. Implementing this amendment would most definitely add additional layers of oversight, meaning delays to protective measures, measures designed to protect animals. This proposed amendment might be placing procedure above animal safeguarding. Animal welfare orders are often technical. They quite often require expert input on the ground rather than potentially protracted political debate. This proposed amendment is likely to result in inconsistencies rather than a unified, holistic approach that the proposed law is intending to promote. Under the proposed amendment, the Minister can still prohibit activities by order, but can no longer permit activities by order. This seems a little disproportionate and illogical, and defeating the proactive, proportional benefits of the law in general. Broadly, sir, there are two types of licensing regimes. One allowing activities to happen, which handle animals such as dog walking, grooming, sanctuaries, and the other licensing regime allowing activities that may be otherwise prohibited if the risk is deemed low. For example, licensing a dog to enter Jersey that had a mutilated tail due to a veterinary procedure. Scrutiny amendment does not define activities related to animal welfare, so one has to assume it refers to all activities involving animals because all of these may have an impact on animal welfare. This will mean that the requirement for regulations will affect both types of licensing. Scrutiny proposed amendment does not consider the whole law holistically, does not consider consequential effects on the law or in the secondary legislation. Ultimately, this amendment's not about specifically improving animal welfare. It's not about animals, but more about process and control. Some of these inconsistencies are as follows. The amendment is proposing to have activities related to animals defined by regulations. These regulations, however, do not allow for penalties or offences to be created. This means that regulations can define what activities need to be licensed, but cannot define penalties or offences. Penalties or offences are defined by the law, and the proposed law only defines offences and penalties for the law itself and for orders. This amendment overlooks the penalties and offences when adopting regulation. The proposed amendment excludes restricted procedures under Article 18, Part 2 from the regulation requirement, but does not amend Article 26, Part 2, which refers to exceptional measures and prohibited procedures. This means for some prohibited procedures would still need to be defined by regulations. There may be further consequential issues created by this amendment that we may not be aware of yet. We may make the law difficult to implement. We must look at the law as a whole and cannot accept an amendment that results in a weakening of the law. We shouldn't afford to patch the system which measures that merely respond to the law's perceived weaknesses. We must evaluate the legislation as a whole, carefully, coherently, and with a commitment to long-term effectiveness. If we accept amendments that undermine clarity or weaken enforceability, we risk creating a framework that fails both on the public and those responsible for upholding it. Our duty is to ensure that the law remains robust, coherent and practical. Anything less would compromise its purpose. So ultimately this law is about animal welfare and the protection of animals, and that's what should be on our mind when voting. I can't support the amendment because it threatens to weaken the clarity, compromises the enforceability and potentially introduces contradictions into a system which must be reliable and robust. My responsibility is not to adjust laws reactively, but to ensure they remain consistent, effective and fit for purpose. And for that reason, I will reject the amendment, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Alex Curtis, you indicated you wish to speak. We're coming up to 1 o'clock. Will that give you sufficient time to make your speech?
I should take no more than 10 minutes, which will take us to 1:02, so
Thank you.
I'll probably be less than that.
Very well.
I'll go quickly.
Yes, thank you.
Quickly, but not with my words. Thank you, sir. And I will just reiterate some of the points, and as I go, I'll try to address some of what the Minister has said. But I would like to start by that reframing that the Chair made about last sitting, in which we debated the food regulations and the EHI panel proposed its amendment. Members will remember that the amendment to that was around fee structures and was narrowly rejected. But I got the sense that members were weighing up the balance as to Assembly oversight of regulation that this Assembly passes. The main regulations we were debating were about the creation of a licensing scheme, one that didn't exist. The scrutiny panel took time to review it, and I believe, and the Minister can nod, that he felt that scrutiny's work in scrutinising a new licensing scheme was beneficial for his offices, for the law itself, and ultimately it received an Assembly mandate to exist. Today we're debating a similar debate, not about how much a licence should cost, but the in-principle decision as to what licences should even exist. The Minister's made a key case about prohibited activities or things that should not happen. But members should be clear that today what the panel is asking about is about creating licensing schemes that restrict permissive activities. Should you be allowed to own an animal without a licence? Should you be able to operate a business in an area of animals without a licence? Examples the Minister gave might be repeating existing things, dog walking or kennelling and boarding. But this legislation will allow for much more than that. And really, I think we've got to look at how wide that goes. The Chair gave an example that this could go to domestic animals. This law provides the power for the Minister to regulate the ownership of cats, for example. We have a dogs law. This provides sufficient power to create ownerships and licensing for cat ownership and the fees associated with cat ownership. The Minister said that this wouldn't be his intention. In scrutiny, he believed that the powers in this law were for commercial until we pushed him, and he understands they go broader. So when it comes to the clarity of legislation in front of us, we have to ask it in both ways. And this also is contrary to the words the Minister had during the principles debate. When I pushed him, either in a question or in that sitting, about this, he said whether it is 2 livestock, and this was about livestock licensing, or 200, the animal's welfare always mattered, regardless as to who owned it. So the Minister's not been consistent as to who should be covered by licensing either. I'll make quickly the other point that actually This is about animal welfare, the Minister says, and I will challenge that. Regardless as to whether an activity is licensed or not, the Minister has made the key and I think valid case that this law improves powers for managing animal welfare. If an activity is not licensed, this does not prohibit improvement notices or inspectors entering premises and handling animal welfare. What we're talking about is whether they need to get permission first. And when we stop people doing stuff without permission, we have to think as an assembly long and hard. That is an in-principle debate, and I believe it should live here. I'll remake the point I made last sitting, but I'll make it even more important. This is all still subordinate legislation, and if it was made by order, a member could still request an annulment. But this is a reactive negative act, and regulations allow for more collegiate and better legislation. The Minister or a future Minister may well propose to license livestock. The Assembly at large may wish to exempt domestic or non-commercial use. Regulations are the perfect forum to allow that. Orders are a negative, combative way to fight that with that baby out with the bathwater. A couple of things. We had a hearing with the Minister for Infrastructure who said it's going to be hard to find a new Minister for Infrastructure because of the battles. And as we are forming new laws and perhaps ceding more powers to ministers, we have to look at whether our ministries are becoming toxic. They are too hard and too much for one person. Look at some of the debates we've had. Imagine if trees legislation came in by order, the attack we would have to annul it. Think about the importance of other licensing schemes we've had. The rented dwelling licensing scheme, the Minister at the time was in scrutiny proposing 10, then consolidated to 1 amendment. He probably felt licensing of something like that benefited from scrutiny. And I think a new licensing scheme for something as important as perhaps owning livestock, owning domestic animals, should warrant the same amount. Looking back at the time, we've debated over almost 300 propositions in this term alone, not including amendments. Some of those have been minor. Those are things like appointments to boards, or technical, like changes to the company's legislation or things that the Minister for External Relations brings. Some of them are narrow in scope, such as minimum catch or size limits. Another piece by the Minister. These have all come in front of us and we've not batted an eyelid to the burden it puts on this Assembly. In fact, it makes us all support the respective ministers in their role as the executive. The debates in these have been proportionate to the scrutiny and Assembly input needed. Where there is clarity and the principles are there, these debates are very short. When we find there's more, the debates are longer, and that is time well spent. To turn to the need to act quickly, the Minister said it is essential in this area. But we know that we are able to act quickly as an Assembly. We should strive to work proportionately. We can lower lodging periods. And whilst we will talk after the lunch adjournment about his amendment, any consultation with scrutiny would equally cost as much time, no doubt, than just providing regulations to this Assembly. So I, sir, will make the real case that regulation-making power, order-making powers to create licensing schemes is not an appropriate balance. These are wide-ranging powers, and as an Assembly, we must look to find a way to provide support for the new legislation we provide, to get a common mandate, to get good quality legislation. There is no evidential case a Minister has provided that makes this a more burdensome route on his department and on this Assembly's valuable time. And I would say if he's concerned about technical elements about the amendment that weaken the law, my count is that unamended, this law is equally not fit for purpose. And if members are truly concerned with the consequential outcomes of this amendment, they should vote against the law as drafted by him.
Thank you, Deputy Curtis. Do you propose the adjournment?
Adjournment, sir.
Yes. Is the adjournment agreed? Yes. Very well. We will adjourn until 1 o'clock, and I believe we have a photograph. We will adjourn until 2 o'clock. And I believe that we have a photograph, so we will adjourn until 2 o'clock.